My 7-year-old adopted granddaughter was left at home alone while my son and his wife took their biological son on a 15-day Caribbean cruise. She called me at 2:30 in the morning, screaming and crying, asking Grandpa why didn't they wake me up. I booked last-minute tickets, and within 6 hours, we crashed their vacation. I am Elijah Jefferson, 75 years old, and for the first time in my life, I am not the calm protector everyone thinks I am. I am a man on a warpath. My son Marcus and his wife Tiffany thought they could treat a child like a disposable accessory. They thought my silence meant ignorance. They were wrong. Before I tell you how I turned their dream vacation into a nightmare, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you believe family is about love, not blood. The thunder that night was shaking the foundation of my old farmhouse, but it was the ringing of the landline that truly woke me up. I keep that old phone for emergencies, but it had not rung at this hour in years, not since my wife Sarah passed. I fumbled for the receiver, my heart already hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. "Grandpa." The voice was small, terrified, and barely audible over the static of the storm. "Maya, is that you?" I sat up, pushing the heavy quilt aside, my joints protesting the sudden movement. "Grandpa, it is dark and the thunder is loud." I went to Mommy and Daddy's room, but they are not there. Leo is not in his room either. The car is gone. Why didn't they wake me up, Grandpa? Did I do something bad? The blood in my veins turned to ice. Maya was 7 years old. My son Marcus and his wife Tiffany lived 40 minutes away in the upscale subdivision of Buckhead, in a house I had paid the down payment for. Maya listened to me very carefully. "Are you sure they are not in the house?" I looked everywhere, Grandpa. The closet is empty. Mommy's big suitcases are gone. I am scared. "Stay on the phone with me, baby girl. I am coming. Do not hang up." I scrambled out of bed, my hands shaking not from age but from a rage so pure it felt like gasoline in my gut. I threw on my trousers and a heavy coat, grabbing my keys and the tire iron I kept by the back door, though I did not know yet why I grabbed it. I ran out into the deluge. The rain was coming down in sheets, turning my dirt driveway into a mud slick. My old Ford pickup roared to life, and I peeled out onto the main road, ignoring the speed limit. The windshield wipers slapped back and forth frantically, fighting a losing battle against the storm. "Grandpa, are you there?" Maya's voice whimpered through the car's Bluetooth. "I am here, Maya. I am driving fast. You just keep talking to me. Tell me where you are right now." "I am in the kitchen pantry. I have Mr. Bear." But the lights went out. "Keep hugging Mr. Bear, honey. I will be there in 20 minutes. I pressed the accelerator harder. The truck hydroplaned slightly on a curve, and I corrected it with the muscle memory of a man who spent 40 years in logistics managing fleets of trucks across the country. My mind raced faster than the engine. Marcus had told me 2 days ago they were just having a quiet week at home. He said work was slow. He said Tiffany was stressed. He asked for $10,000 to fix a crack in the foundation. I gave it to him because that is what fathers do. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned ash gray. He took the money. He took his wife. He took his biological son, Leo, and he left Maya. The fury blinded me more than the rain. Maya was adopted 3 years ago. Tiffany had made a big show of it on social media, posting photos of her new forever family, gaining thousands of likes and followers. But off camera, I had seen the way she looked at Maya, like a prop, like a burden. Leo got the new tablets, Maya got the hand-me-downs. Leo got the tutors, Maya got the chores. But this was not just neglect, this was criminal. I skidded into their neighborhood, tearing past the manicured lawns and gated driveways. I pulled up to their house. It was completely dark, a tomb in the middle of the storm. I jumped out of the truck, ignoring the rain soaking me to the bone instantly. I ran to the front door and punched in the code Marcus had given me years ago. Error. I tried again. Error. They had changed the code. They locked her in and locked me out. "Maya," I shouted, pounding on the solid oak door. "Maya, I am here." I could not hear her over the thunder. I ran around the back to the patio doors. Locked. I tried the kitchen window. Locked. I looked through the glass and saw nothing but shadows. Panic began to rise in my chest. A 75-year-old heart is not meant for this kind of stress, but adrenaline is a powerful drug. I remembered the tire iron in my hand. I did not hesitate. I did not think about property damage. I swung the iron with all the strength of a man who used to load cargo ships by hand. The sound of shattering glass was swallowed by a clap of thunder. The security alarm started blaring, a piercing shriek that cut through the night. I cleared the jagged shards from the frame and climbed through my boots, crunching on the glass. "Maya!" I bellowed, my voice booming over the alarm. I ran to the kitchen. Empty. The pantry door was closed. I ripped it open. There, huddled in the corner between bags of rice and canned goods, was a tiny figure in pink pajamas clutching a ragged teddy bear. She was shaking so hard her teeth were chattering. "Oh, Grandpa!" She launched herself into my arms. I caught her falling to my knees on the cold tile floor. She was burning up. Her skin was hot and dry against my wet coat. "I got you, baby. I got you." I rocked her, feeling her small heart beating like a trapped bird against my chest. I carried her out of the pantry. The alarm was still screaming. I walked to the keypad on the wall and smashed it with the tire iron until the noise died. The silence that followed was heavy. I looked around the kitchen. It was spotless. Too spotless. There were no dishes in the sink, no sign of life. Except for one thing. On the granite island illuminated by a flash of lightning was a single sheet of paper. I walked over, still holding Maya tight. She buried her face in my neck, sobbing quietly. I picked up the note. It was written in Tiffany's looping calligraphic handwriting, the kind she used for her thank you notes and social media captions. "Maya, Mommy, and Daddy and Leo have to go on a very important business trip for work. It was a big emergency and we could not wake you up. There are crackers in the pantry and juice boxes in the fridge. Do not open the door for anyone. The cameras are on so we can see you. Be a good girl. We will be back in a few days. Love, Mommy." I stared at the note. Business trip. Emergency. My eyes scanned the counter. Next to the note was a crumpled ball of paper that had missed the trash can. I smoothed it out with my free hand. It was a receipt printed yesterday. Royal Caribbean Cruise Line. Guest names: Marcus Jefferson, Tiffany. Jefferson, Leo Jefferson. Room type family suite. Total cost $10,500. Date of departure today. They had not gone on a business trip. They were on a luxury cruise. They had taken my $10,000, the money for the foundation repair, and used it to sail away to paradise while leaving a 7-year-old sick child alone in a house during a storm. I looked down at Maya. She was wheezing slightly, her fever radiating through her pajamas. They left her to die. If the fever didn't get her, the fear would have. Or a fire. Or an intruder. I crushed the receipt in my fist. My hand was trembling not from the cold anymore, but from a cold, calculated anger that settled deep in my marrow. "Grandpa," she whispered. "Are they coming back?" I looked at the note again. The smiley face drawn next to Love, Mommy looked demonic in the shadows. "No, baby girl," I said, my voice low and steady. "We are not waiting for them to come back. We are going to find them." I carried her out to the truck, shielding her from the rain. I buckled her in, wrapping her in the emergency blanket I kept behind the seat. I did not call the police. Not yet. The police would put Maya in Child Protective Services while they investigated. They would put her in a system I did not trust. No. This was personal. This was family business. And I was going to handle it the way I handled everything in my life, with precision and overwhelming force. I put the truck in gear and drove away from that house, that monument to their greed. As I drove, I pulled out my phone. I dialed a number I hadn't called in years. "Dr. Evans," I said when he answered, his sleep-filled voice confused. "Get your bag. I am bringing Maya to you. She has a fever and I need her cleared to travel." "Travel. Where are you going, Elijah, at 3 in the morning?" I looked at the crumpled cruise receipt on the passenger seat. "We are going to Nassau," I said. "I have a ship to catch." The road ahead was dark, but my path was clear. They wanted a vacation. I was going to bring them a reckoning. The drive to my farmhouse was a blur of rain and adrenaline. But the moment I carried Maya through the front door, the silence of my own home felt heavy, not peaceful. I laid her on the sofa in the living room, wrapping her in the quilt that smelled like cedar and old memories. She was shivering violently, her eyes wide and glassy, fixed on a corner of the room as if she expected the darkness to swallow her whole again. I called Dr. Evans immediately. Walter Evans has been my friend for 40 years since we worked the docks together before he went to medical school at night. He didn't ask questions, he just said he was on his way. While I waited, I tried to get Maya to drink some warm water, but she flinched every time the floorboards creaked. When Walter arrived 10 minutes later, rain dripping from his hat, his face went pale as he looked at the small, trembling girl on my couch. He didn't say a word to me, just knelt beside her, his movements slow and gentle. He listened to her chest with his stethoscope, his frown deepening with every breath she took. "It is pneumonia, Elijah," he said quietly, pulling the stethoscope from his ears. "Mild for now, but her lungs are congested. The fever is dangerous. But that is not what worries me the most." He gestured for me to follow him into the kitchen, away from Maya's earshot. "She is in shock, Elijah. Her heart rate is erratic. She is showing signs of acute psychological trauma. Abandonment isn't just physical, it tears the mind apart. If she stays in this state, her body will shut down. She needs medication, she needs rest, but more than anything, she needs to feel safe. The word tasted like ash in my mouth. I had failed to keep her safe. I had trusted the wrong people. "I need you to stay with her, Walter," I said, grabbing my keys again. "Where are you going?" "I have to go back to that house. I need her clothes, I need her inhaler, and I need to find out exactly what happened." Walter looked at me, his eyes searching mine. He saw the darkness there, the cold resolve I usually kept hidden behind the demeanor of a retired grandfather. "Do not do anything that will take you away from her, Elijah," he warned. "She needs you, not a avenger. She will have both, I promised." The drive back to Marcus's house was different. The panic was gone, replaced by a forensic clarity. I wasn't rushing anymore. I was hunting. When I stepped back into that house, the air felt stagnant. It smelled of expensive cleaning products and betrayal. I went to Maya's room first. It was a small guest room downstairs away from the master suite, and Leo's room upstairs. It was sparse. No posters on the walls, just a bed, a dresser, and a small stack of books. I packed a bag, quickly grabbing her inhaler from the nightstand. Then I went upstairs. Leo's room was a shrine to indulgence. Video game consoles, wall-to-wall toys, a television bigger than the one in my living room. I didn't touch anything. I moved to the master bedroom. It was locked, but I had the master key. I paid for the locks after all. Inside, it was a mess of rejected outfits and discarded packing materials. It looked like a tornado of vanity had swept through. I wasn't looking for clothes. I was looking for the truth. I went straight to the closet where Marcus kept the server for the home security system. He thought he was clever changing the door code, but he forgot who installed the system. I was the one who wired this house. I was the one who set up the server. I had the admin override. I pulled up the monitor and logged in. My fingers flew across the keyboard, my heart thudding a slow, heavy beat. I scrolled back through the timeline. Yesterday, 1100 hours, I hit play. The grainy night vision footage flickered to life, showing the living room and the front hallway. I watched as my son Marcus dragged two massive Louis Vuitton suitcases toward the door. He was wearing his vacation clothes, a floral shirt that looked ridiculous on him. Tiffany followed him. She looked radiant, too radiant. She was laughing, checking her reflection in the hall mirror, applying a fresh coat of lipstick. Leo ran past them, holding a new Nintendo Switch. He was wide awake, buzzing with energy. "Shh, buddy," Marcus whispered loudly, a grin on his face. "You gotta be quiet. We don't want to wake up the house." Tiffany giggled, twirling a sun hat in her hand. "Let her sleep," she said, her voice dismissive and light. "It is better this way. Saves us the drama of explaining why she isn't coming." My fist clenched on the desk. Drama. That is what my granddaughter was to them. Drama. "But Marcus," I heard my son ask, his voice holding a shred of hesitation, just a shred. "What about food? What if she wakes up scared?" Tiffany rolled her eyes. "Oh, please, Marcus. She is 7, not 2. There are crackers in the pantry." And I left a note. "Besides, old lady Henderson next door is always nosy. She will see the lights go out and figure it out. She will keep an eye on things. She will figure it out. They didn't ask Mrs. Henderson. They didn't call her. They didn't leave a key. They just assumed a neighbor would magically divine that a 7-year-old was left alone in a locked house." I watched them walk out the door. I watched Marcus lock it from the outside. I watched him punch in the new code, ensuring that the old code, my code, wouldn't work. He didn't just leave her. He trapped her. I stopped the video. I had seen enough of the footage, but I needed more. I needed the paper trail. I needed to know how a man who begged me for money to fix a cracked foundation suddenly had the funds for Louis Vuitton and luxury cruises. I began tearing through the room. I checked the nightstand drawers. Nothing. I checked underneath the mattress. Nothing. Then I saw it. In the wastebasket by the vanity, tucked under a used makeup wipe. A crumpled ball of paper. I smoothed it out on the glass top of the dresser. It was a credit card statement, but not just any statement. It was for a joint account I didn't know they had. I ran my finger down the list of transactions and the numbers screamed at me. Royal Caribbean Cruise Line, family suite, $10,500, paid 3 days ago. Neiman Marcus, luxury luggage and apparel, $5,000, paid 2 days ago. Total, $15,500. I closed my eyes and the math arranged itself in my head like the tumblers of a lock falling into place. 2 weeks ago, Marcus had come to me, his head in his hands. He told me the foundation of the house was cracking. He said it was dangerous. He said he was afraid for Leo and Maya. He asked for $15,000. I wired it to him the next morning. I depleted my emergency repair fund for my own farm because I thought I was protecting my grandchildren's home. I didn't pay for a foundation. I paid for this. I paid for the suitcases they dragged out the door. I paid for the ship they were sailing on. I paid for the very instrument of my granddaughter's abandonment. I looked at the invoice again. A family suite. There was no bed for Maya. They never intended to take her. This wasn't a last-minute decision. This was calculated. They took my money, my trust, and my love, and they twisted it into a weapon against an innocent child. I looked at the date on the cruise receipt. They were at sea now. They were probably sipping cocktails, watching the sunset, laughing about how clever they were, thinking they had pulled off the perfect crime. They thought Maya would just eat crackers and wait. They thought I was just a senile old man who wrote checks and stayed in his lane. I slowly crushed the receipt in my hand until my knuckles turned white. The paper cut into my palm, but I didn't feel it. I could call the police right now. I could show them the video. I could show them the receipts. They would issue a warrant. They would contact the ship. But the law is slow. The law is clinical. And the law would take Maya and put her in a room with strangers asking her questions she didn't understand while lawyers argued about custody and jurisdiction. No, this wasn't a matter for the police. Not yet. Marcus and Tiffany wanted to live a fantasy life funded by my money. They wanted to play the part of the rich, carefree couple. I decided then and there that I was going to give them exactly what they wanted. I was going to bring the reality of their choices to their doorstep. Or rather, to their deck chair. I pocketed the receipts. I pulled the hard drive from the security system and slipped it into my pocket. I walked out of that master bedroom and I didn't close the door. I left the house exactly as it was. Broken glass on the floor. Alarm smashed. Pantry open. Let them wonder. I got back into my truck, the rain finally letting up. The sun was threatening to rise, painting the sky in bruises of purple and gray. I drove back to my farm, my mind sharpening into a single point of focus. Walter met me at the door. "She is sleeping," he whispered. "Her breathing is better. Did you find what you needed?" I looked at my old friend, and I knew my eyes looked different. I felt older and yet stronger than I had in 20 years. I found everything, Walter. "What are you going to do, Elijah?" I walked past him to the landline on the wall. I picked up the receiver and dialed a number I knew by heart, a number that belonged to a man who owed me a favor from a lifetime ago, a man who ran the charter flights out of the private airfield south of the city. "I am going to take a trip, Walter." I said, my voice flat and hard. "Pack your bag, doctor. You are coming too. I need someone to watch Maya while I handle my business." "Handle your business?" Walter asked. "What does that mean?" "It means," I said, staring at the crumpled receipt in my hand, "it means I am going to foreclose on my son." The silence in the farmhouse was broken by a sound that hurt worse than the breaking glass of my son's kitchen window. It was Maya. She was sitting up on the sofa, the quilt pooling around her waist, her small hands gripping a mug of warm broth Walter had prepared. Her eyes, usually bright with the innocence of 7 years, were dark and hollowed out by a feverish exhaustion. "Grandpa," she whispered, and I had to lean in close to hear her over the settling groans of the old house. "Is it because I am not real?" I froze. Walter stopped wiping his glasses in the corner. "What do you mean, baby girl?" I asked, sitting on the edge of the coffee table, my knees cracking. "Mommy told her friend on the phone that having me was good for her brand, but sometimes it was hard because I am not her real daughter. Is that why they left me? Because I am not real like Leo?" The air left the room. It felt as if a giant hand had reached into my chest and squeezed my heart until it stopped beating. This was the poison. This was the rot I had sensed beneath Tiffany's curated smiles and Marcus's weak excuses, but I never thought they would say it. I never thought they would let a child feel it. They made her feel like a prop, an accessory that could be put back on the shelf when vacation time came. I reached out and took her hands in mine. My hands were rough, calloused from years of working the soil on this farm, but before that they were calloused from gripping the steering wheels of rigs, and before that from signing contracts that moved millions of dollars of freight across the Atlantic. "You listen to me, Maya," I said, my voice trembling with a ferocity I struggled to contain. "You are the most real thing in this family. You are my granddaughter. Blood makes you related, but loyalty makes you family, and they do not have a drop of loyalty in their veins." She looked at me, searching for the lie, but she found only the hard iron truth of a grandfather who had reached his breaking point. "Go back to sleep, baby girl," I said, smoothing her hair. "When you wake up, things are going to be different." She closed her eyes, the medicine Walter gave her finally pulling her under. I stood up and looked at Walter. He was staring at the floor, shaking his head. "They broke her, Elijah," he said softly. "They didn't break her," I replied, walking toward my bedroom. "They just woke me up." I walked into my bedroom and locked the door. For the last 15 years since I retired, I have played the part. I wore the flannel shirts, I drove the beat-up Ford. I fixed my own fences and grew my own vegetables. I let Marcus believe I was just a pensioner living off Social Security and a small nest egg. I let him believe his inheritance would be the land and the house. I did it because I wanted him to be a man. I wanted him to build his own empire, not just live in the shadow of mine. I was the executive vice president of logistics for one of the largest shipping conglomerates in the Southeast. I didn't just move boxes, I moved economies. I retired because I was tired of the Shark Tank, but I never forgot how to swim. I walked to the large oil painting of Sarah that hung on the far wall. I swung it open. Behind it was a wall safe. I spun the dial, left, right, left. The tumblers clicked with a satisfying heavy thud. Inside was a life Marcus knew nothing about. Stacks of bonds, deeds to properties I had quietly acquired over the decades, and a small velvet box. I opened the box. Inside sat a card. It wasn't plastic. It was made of anodized titanium. The American Express Centurion card. The black card. Invitation only. No limit. I ran my thumb over the raised letters of my name. Elijah Jefferson. I hadn't used it in 5 years. I kept it for emergencies. This was an emergency. I slipped the card into my pocket. Then I turned to the closet. I pushed aside the denim overalls and the rain jackets. Way in the back, covered in a garment bag that hadn't seen the light of day since Sarah's funeral, was my armor. I unzipped the bag. The suit was Italian, bespoke charcoal gray wool tailored to fit me like a second skin. It smelled of cedar and authority. I stripped off my wet, muddy clothes. I washed the dirt from my hands and face. I shaved the stubble from my chin. When I dressed, I didn't just put on clothes. I put on a persona. I put on the man who used to stare down union bosses and negotiate mergers. I tied the silk tie with a perfect Windsor knot. I put on the gold cufflinks Sarah had given me for our 30th anniversary. I stepped into the hand-stitched leather Oxfords. I looked in the mirror. The farmer was gone. The Titan was back. I pulled out my phone and dialed a number I had not called in a decade. It rang twice. DeKalb Peachtree Aero Services, Gordon speaking. "Gordon, it is Elijah Jefferson." There was a pause, a silence that stretched for a heartbeat. "Mr. Jefferson, I haven't heard your voice in a long time, sir. I thought you were out of the game. I was Gordon, but I have a situation. I need a bird, and I need it now." "What kind of range are we talking, sir?" "Nassau. And I need speed. I am not looking for a prop plane, Gordon. I need a jet. I have a Gulfstream G650 sitting on the tarmac prep for a charter that just canceled. It is fueled and filed. It can be wheels up in 45 minutes. I will take it. Sir, that is a heavy tag for a last-minute booking. Put it on the account, Gordon. The black card is still active." "Understood, Mr. Jefferson. We will have the crew ready." I hung up. I walked back out into the living room. Walter looked up and his jaw actually dropped. He stood up slowly, looking at the suit, looking at the way I held myself. "Elijah," he breathed. "I haven't seen you look like that since the merger in '98. "The merger is over, Walter," I said, picking up Maya's packed bag. "This is a hostile takeover." I went to the couch and scooped Maya up. She stirred but didn't wake completely. She curled into the wool of my suit, her head resting on my shoulder. "We are leaving," I said. We walked out into the early morning light. The storm had passed, leaving the world washed clean and gray. I didn't walk to the old Ford truck. I walked to the garage where I kept the Lincoln Town car under a tarp. Marcus always made fun of it, said it was an old man's car. He didn't know it was bulletproof. He didn't know it had a V8 engine that could outrun his leased BMW. I put Maya in the back seat. Walter got in the front. "Where are we going, Elijah?" Walter asked as I backed out of the driveway, the gravel crunching under the tires. "We are going to the private airfield. We are flying to Nassau. Flying, Elijah, that costs a fortune." I looked at him, and for the first time I let the mask slip completely. "Marcus thinks I am a poor old man, Walter. He thinks he stole my retirement fund to go on a boat ride. He thinks he won." I merged onto the highway, the Lincoln purring like a panther. He forgot who taught him how to count. He forgot that before I was a farmer, I was the man who signed the checks. Maya stirred in the back seat. She opened her eyes, blinking at the leather interior in the back of my suit. "Grandpa," she asked sleepily, "you look fancy. Where are we going?" I looked at her in the rearview mirror. "We are going to get justice, baby girl. Go back to sleep. When you wake up, we will be in the sky." I pressed the accelerator. The sleeping giant was awake, and he was coming for his son. The Gulfstream touched down on the tarmac at Lynden Pindling International Airport with a force that rattled the ice in my glass of water, but I did not spill a drop. I watched through the oval window as the heat waves danced off the asphalt. Nassau, the playground of the wealthy, the escape for the weary, and the current location of my son and his stolen vacation. We had beaten the ship. My pilot Gordon had pushed the engines to their limit, cutting through the airspace like a knife. The Royal Caribbean vessel carrying Marcus and Tiffany was just now beginning its slow, lumbering docking procedure at the cruise terminal miles away. We had time, but not much. I unbuckled Maya. She looked small in the oversized leather seat, clutching her teddy bear and the new coloring book Walter had bought her at the airfield store. Her fever had broken thanks to the antibiotics, but her eyes were still wide, scanning the unfamiliar world with the wariness of a child who had learned that safety was an illusion. "Come on, baby girl," I said, extending my hand. "Time to go." Walter grabbed our bags. He looked out the window at the palm trees swaying in the wind. "Do you have a plan for getting on that boat, Elijah?" he asked. "You cannot just walk onto a cruise ship like it is a bus. Post 9/11 maritime security is tighter than a drum." I adjusted my cufflinks. "I helped write the protocols, Walter. Now let us go see if they still follow them." The ride to the port was silent. I sat in the back of the hired town car, watching the colorful streets of Nassau blur by. My mind was not on the scenery, it was on the logistics. I was calculating angles, leveraging probabilities. I was back in the boardroom, back in the days when I could shut down a shipping lane with a phone call. When we arrived at the cruise terminal, it was a chaotic sea of humanity. Taxis, buses, and bewildered tourists swarming like ants. The ship was looming in the berth, a massive white city on the water. It was impressive to some, but to me it was just a floating hotel for people running away from their lives. I marched us past the lines of people waiting to check in for the next leg, past the vendors hawking straw hats and cheap rum. I went straight to the Port Authority office, a glass-walled room that overlooked the entire operation. A young security officer stepped in front of me. He was broad-chested, wearing a uniform that was too tight, and an expression that said he enjoyed telling people no. "Sir, you cannot be back here. This is a restricted area. Passenger check-in is that way." He pointed toward the herd of sweating tourists. "I am not a passenger yet," I said, my voice low and level. "I need to speak to the port director." The officer laughed. It was a dry, dismissive sound. "The director is busy, and unless you have a badge or an appointment, you need to turn around and get in line with everyone else." I felt Walter tense up beside me. I felt Maya's hand tighten in mine. She was looking up at me, waiting to see if I would shrink away, if I would become the quiet old man she knew at the farm. I did not shrink. I looked at the officer's name tag. "Officer Davis," I said. "I understand you are doing your job, but I am not a tourist. My name is Elijah Jefferson. I spent 30 years moving freight through these waters. I helped negotiate the dredging contracts that allow these megaships to dock here. Now, I am going to ask you one more time to open that door." Officer Davis crossed his arms. "Look, old man, I don't care if you invented the boat. No ticket, no entry. Move along or I call the local police. I saw the fear flicker in Maya's eyes. She thought we were failing. She thought the authority figures were going to win just like her parents had won by leaving her. I let out a slow breath. I released Maya's hand gently and handed her to Walter. "Hold on a second," I said. I turned back to the officer. But I didn't speak English. I switched to Spanish, the dialect of the Caribbean trade routes, the language I had spoken in dock offices from Miami to Caracas for 3 decades. It was sharp, fast, and authoritative. "Escúchame bien, hijo. No tengo tiempo para juegos. Llama al director Ramírez ahora mismo. Dile que el fantasma de Atlanta está aquí. Dile que si no me abre esta puerta en 10 segundos, voy a llamar a sus superiores en la Comisión Marítima y recordarles ciertos contenedores que se perdieron en el 98. Translation: Listen to me, son. I do not have time for games. Call Director Ramirez right now. Tell him the ghost of Atlanta is here. Tell him if he does not open this door in 10 seconds, I will call his superiors at the Maritime Commission and remind him of certain containers that went lost in 98. The officer's jaw dropped. The arrogance vanished, replaced by a sudden confusion. He didn't know who I was, but he knew the tone. It was the tone of a man who signed the paychecks of the men who signed his paychecks. He picked up the phone. He whispered something into the receiver, his eyes never leaving my face. He nodded once, then twice. He hung up. The buzzer on the glass door sounded. "Director Ramirez will see you now, Mr. Jefferson." I nodded, adjusting my jacket. "Thank you, Officer Davis." I took Maya's hand again. She was looking at me with her mouth slightly open. "Grandpa," she whispered as we walked through the secure door. "You speak Spanish. You sounded like a movie star." I squeezed her hand. "I speak the language of getting things done, baby girl." Inside the office was cool and quiet, a stark contrast to the humidity outside. Director Ramirez was a man my age with silver hair and a suit that cost more than my truck. He stood up when I entered. "Elijah Jefferson," he said, extending a hand. "It has been 20 years. I thought you were retired." "I was Mateo," I said, shaking his hand firmly. "But retirement didn't stick. I have a situation." I explained it briefly. I didn't give him the sob story. I gave him the facts. "My son is on that ship. He has my money. He abandoned my granddaughter. I need to be on that ship before it leaves port." Ramirez looked at the computer screen. "Elijah, the manifest is locked. The ship is full. Post-9/11 regulations are strict. I cannot just add a passenger to a full ship." I leaned forward, placing my hands on his mahogany desk. "Mateo, there is never a full ship. There is always one room. The owner's suite. The one they keep for the CEO or the high rollers or the emergency dignitaries. Is it occupied?" Ramirez hesitated. "It is empty, yes. But Elijah, the cost. It is not a standard booking. It is $25,000 for the remainder of the voyage. Cash or wire only up front." I didn't blink. I reached into my inner pocket and pulled out the titanium Centurion card. I placed it on the desk with a heavy metallic clack. "Swipe it," I said, "including a gratuity for your staff to expedite the paperwork and get us through customs in 5 minutes." Ramirez looked at the card, then at me, then at Maya clinging to my leg. He smiled a slow, respectful smile. The ghost of Atlanta is definitely back. 10 minutes later, we were walking down the VIP gangway. A member of the ship's staff, a woman in a crisp white uniform, was escorting us. She carried a silver tray with glasses of apple juice for Maya and champagne for Walter and me. We bypassed the long, snaking lines of hundreds of passengers baking in the sun. We walked past the security checkpoints where people were taking off their shoes and belts. We walked straight onto the ship into the air-conditioned atrium that smelled of expensive perfume and money. "Mr. Jefferson," the escort said, beaming. "Your luggage will be brought up immediately. The owner's suite is on deck 17. It has a private balcony, a grand piano, and a dedicated butler. Is there anything else you require right now?" "No, thank you," I said. "Just show us the way." We took the glass elevator up. As we rose, I looked out over the railing. The atrium was a hollow cavern of gold and glass, but my eyes were drawn to the windows overlooking the dock. We stepped out onto the private deck reserved for the suite guests. It was high above the rest of the ship. From here, we could see everything. "Come here, Maya," I said, lifting her up so she could see over the railing. "Look down there." I pointed toward the main gangway far below us. It was crowded, hot, and chaotic. "Do you see them?" I asked. Maya squinted against the glare. Then she gasped. There was Marcus. He was wearing his ridiculous floral shirt, dragging those two heavy Louis Vuitton suitcases, struggling to keep them upright. He was sweating, wiping his forehead with the back of his hand. Tiffany was next to him, fanning herself with a pamphlet, looking miserable and annoyed, yelling something at Leo, who was crying and tugging on her arm. They were stuck in the general boarding line, sandwiched between a large family with screaming toddlers and a group of college students already drunk on cheap beer. "They look hot," Maya said quietly. "They are hot," I said, "and they are about to get a lot hotter." I watched my son. I watched the man who stole from me. I watched the woman who locked my granddaughter in a pantry. They looked small from up here. They looked insignificant. They thought they were entering a world of luxury. They didn't know they were walking into a trap. I took a sip of the champagne. It was cold and crisp. "Let's go inside," I said to Maya, setting her down. "We have to get unpacked. We have a dinner to attend tonight." Maya looked up at me, her eyes filled with a new kind of light. It wasn't just safety anymore. It was awe. "Are we going to see them, Grandpa?" "Oh yes, baby girl," I said, opening the door to our suite. "But they are not going to be happy to see us." I walked into the room, the door clicking shut behind us, sealing us in our fortress of vengeance. The game had officially begun. The owner's suite on deck 17 was larger than the entire first floor of my farmhouse. It was 1,400 square feet of marble mahogany and floor-to-ceiling glass. There was a baby grand piano in the corner that probably cost more than Marcus's car and a private hot tub on the balcony that overlooked the endless blue of the Atlantic. Our butler, a young man named James with impeccable posture and a uniform so white it hurt to look at, had just finished unpacking our bags. He placed a tray of fresh fruit and sparkling water on the coffee table and vanished into the background as if he were made of air. I stood by the window looking down. Somewhere 10 decks below us, in the bowels of the ship, my son Marcus and his wife were likely squeezing themselves into a family interior stateroom. I knew the layout: no window, 200 square feet, a bunk bed for Leo that pulled out from the wall. They were probably tripping over their Louis Vuitton suitcases right now, sweating in the humidity, trying to figure out how to look rich while living in a closet. It was petty of me to enjoy that thought. But I am an old man, and I have earned the right to be petty, especially when it comes to people who hurt children. "Come here, Maya," I said, turning away from the window. Maya was sitting on the velvet sofa, swinging her legs. She looked small in this room, surrounded by opulence she couldn't quite comprehend. She was wearing a sundress Walter had bought her at the boutique on the promenade deck. It was yellow, bright as a dandelion. "We are going for a walk," I told her, "but we have to play a game first." "Do you know what a spy is?" Her eyes lit up. "Like in the movies." "Exactly like in the movies. We are going to go down to the pool deck, but we have to be invisible. We have to be ghosts. If Mommy and Daddy see us, the game is over. Can you be a ghost, Maya?" She nodded, solemn and serious. "I can be quiet, Grandpa. I am good at being quiet. Mommy says I am too loud usually, so I learned how to be quiet in the pantry." That statement was a knife to my gut, but I kept my face neutral. I reached into the shopping bag and pulled out a wide-brimmed straw hat and a pair of oversized sunglasses with pink frames. "Put these on," I said. I donned my own disguise, a Panama hat pulled low and a pair of aviators. I swapped my suit jacket for a linen shirt left untucked. To anyone passing by, I was just another wealthy retiree taking his granddaughter for a stroll. We took the private elevator down, bypassing the crowded lobbies. The doors opened on deck 11, and the wall of noise hit us instantly. It was a sensory assault. Reggae music blaring from massive speakers, the smell of chlorine and sunscreen and frying burgers, thousands of people packed onto lounge chairs like sardines. It was the kind of chaotic manufactured joy that people pay thousands of dollars for. I held Maya's hand tight. Her palm was sweating. "Stay close to me," I whispered. "Remember, we are ghosts." We wove through the crowd. I scanned the area with the eyes of a hawk. It didn't take long to find them. Tiffany was not the type of woman who blended in. She demanded attention. There by the main pool near the statue of a giant dolphin. She was wearing a neon pink bikini and a sheer cover-up that cost more than a week's worth of groceries. She had a ring light set up on a portable tripod. Marcus was sitting on a lounge chair looking miserable. He was holding a drink with a little umbrella in it, staring at his phone, ignoring everything around him. But it was Leo who drew my eye. My biological grandson was standing in front of the ring light. He was wearing matching designer swim trunks. He looked hot, tired, and unhappy. He was holding a melting ice cream cone. "Cut," Tiffany yelled, her voice shrill enough to cut through the music. Leo, you are letting it drip. You are ruining the aesthetic. I told you to hold it up and smile. I don't want it, Mommy, Leo whined, wiping sticky vanilla residue on his chest. I want to go swimming. You will swim when I get the shot, Tiffany snapped, snatching the cone from his hand and tossing it into a nearby trash bin. Now stand up straight. Fix your hair. Marcus, get him a fresh cone. We are doing it again. Marcus didn't even look up. Get it yourself, Tiff. I am on vacation. Tiffany let out a huff of frustration that shook her entire body. She grabbed Leo by the arm and yanked him back into the frame. Smile, she hissed. Smile so Mommy can get paid. Do you want toys? Do you want video games? Then smile. Maya stopped walking. Her grip on my hand tightened until her fingernails dug into my skin. She saw them. Her breath hitched. Her small body tensed like a bowstring about to snap. Mommy, she whispered. It was a reflex. An instinct born of biology and dependency. Despite the fear, despite the pantry, despite the abandonment, that woman was the only mother she knew. Maya took a step toward them. She wanted to run. She wanted to be claimed. She wanted to run into that toxic circle and be part of the picture. I dropped to one knee right there on the hot deck. I grabbed her shoulders firmly, turning her away from the scene but keeping them in her peripheral vision. No, I said, my voice low and hard. Do not move. But Grandpa, she is right there. Maybe she came back for me. Maybe she didn't mean to leave me. I looked at my granddaughter. I saw the desperate hope in her eyes, the hope that abused children always hold on to, that somehow it was a mistake, that somehow they are loved. I had to kill that hope. It was the cruelest thing I ever had to do, but I had to kill the lie so she could survive the truth. I pulled out my smartphone. I opened the Instagram app. I followed Tiffany's account. I had created a burner profile months ago just to keep an eye on them. Look, I said, holding the screen up to Maya's face. Look at what she is doing right now. I refreshed the feed. A new photo had just been posted 3 minutes ago. It was a picture of Tiffany holding a cocktail, looking wistfully out at the ocean. She had used a filter that made the sky look bluer and her skin look flawless. I read the caption out loud to Maya, my finger tracing the words. So sad to be leaving paradise today, but my heart is heavy. Missing my sweet baby girl Maya, who is homesick with the flu. Sending you healing vibes, my angel. Mommy loves you so much. Hashtag family first. Hashtag sad mom. Hashtag vacation mode. I looked at Maya, then I pointed back at Tiffany. In real life, Tiffany was currently yelling at a waiter because her drink didn't have enough ice. She wasn't looking at the ocean. She wasn't thinking about Maya. She was checking her engagement metrics. Look at the picture, Maya, I said. And look at her. Maya looked. She looked at the phone where her mother claimed to be sad and heartbroken. Then she looked at the woman 10 yards away who was preening for a camera while her son cried. Is she sad? Maya, I asked. Maya shook her head slowly. No. Is she missing you? Maya watched as Tiffany laughed at something on her phone, completely ignoring Leo, who was sitting on the deck, picking at a scab on his knee. No, Maya whispered. Is she lying? Maya looked up at me. Her lower lip trembled. The tears welled up in her eyes behind the pink sunglasses. But these were not tears of confusion anymore. These were tears of clarity. She lied, she said. Her voice was stronger than I expected. She told everyone I am sick. But I am not sick. I was just in the closet. That is right, baby girl, I said. She lied to the world. And she lied to you. She didn't leave you because of an emergency. She left you because she wanted to take a picture without you. It was a harsh truth. It was a brutal truth. But it was the truth. Maya stared at Tiffany for a long moment. I watched the gears turning in her mind. I watched her mourning the mother she thought she had and accepting the reality of the woman who was actually there. She saw the vanity. She saw the cruelty. She saw the fakeness of it all. Tiffany turned, then scanning the crowd. Her eyes swept right over us. She looked right at me and didn't see me. She looked right at Maya and didn't recognize her own daughter in the nice dress and the sun hat. To Tiffany, we were just background noise. We were just scenery. Maya turned her back on them. She faced me. She reached up and adjusted her sunglasses, pushing them up her nose. She took a deep breath and wiped her cheek. Grandpa, she said. Yes, Maya, I don't want to go over there. They are loud, and Leo is crying. I nodded slowly, feeling a fierce pride swell in my chest. You are right. They are very loud. I held out my hand. She took it. Her grip was different now. It wasn't desperate, it was trusting. "I want ice cream," she said. I smiled. The first genuine smile I had felt in days. "We can do that," I said. "We can get the biggest ice cream on the ship." We stood up. I adjusted my Panama hat. I cast one last look at my son and his wife. They were still bickering, still posing, still trapped in their cycle of shallow validation. They had no idea that the ghosts were walking right past them. "Come on, baby girl," I said. "Let's go to the lounge." The butler said they have strawberry cheesecake flavor. Maya skipped a little as we walked away. She didn't look back. Not once. She had chosen. She had chosen the man who broke a window to save her over the woman who locked a door to leave her. And as we walked into the cool, air-conditioned sanctuary of the ship's interior, I knew that the hardest part was over. Maya knew the truth. Now I could proceed with the punishment. The ghost on the ship was done haunting. It was time to start hunting. The promenade deck of the ship was lined with boutiques that sold things nobody needed but everyone wanted to buy just to prove they could. There were shops selling $5,000 watches, diamond necklaces that cost more than a car, and right in the center, a store called Spyglass. It was a shop dedicated to high-end gadgets for the bored and wealthy. Night vision goggles, drones that could fit in your palm, and long-range listening devices marketed as nature observation tools. I walked in with Maya holding my hand. She was happily licking a strawberry cone, oblivious to the fact that her grandfather was about to arm himself for war. The clerk, a young man who looked like he spent too much time playing video games, sized me up. He saw the linen shirt, the gold watch, and the way I carried myself. He didn't see an old man. He saw a sale. "I need something discreet," I said, pointing to a display case. "Something that can pick up a conversation from 50 yards away in a crowded room. For bird watching, of course." The clerk grinned. "Of course, sir. Bird watching. You want the directional parabolic microphone. It filters out ambient noise, amplifies the target frequency, and records directly to an encrypted SD card. It looks just like a high-end camera lens." I didn't ask the price. I handed him the black card. 5 minutes later, I walked out with a device that cost $2,000. It was a frivolous toy for most people on this ship, but for me it was a subpoena. We found them at the Windjammer Marketplace. It was the ship's massive buffet, a chaotic trough where hundreds of passengers gorged themselves on endless trays of food. The noise was deafening, the clatter of silverware, the screaming of children, the roar of entitlement. Marcus and Tiffany were sitting at a table near the window, far away from the main serving stations. They looked isolated in their own bubble of misery. Tiffany was aggressively cutting a piece of steak, and Marcus was rubbing his temples, looking like a man who wished he could dissolve into the floor. I found a table on the upper mezzanine directly overlooking theirs. It was the perfect vantage point. I settled Maya into a chair with her coloring book and a pair of noise-canceling headphones I had bought at the electronics store. "Grandpa has to do some work for a few minutes, baby girl," I told her. "You color Mr. Bear. Can you do that for me?" She nodded, humming to herself, happy in her own world, a world where she was finally safe. I pulled the device out of the bag. It looked innocuous enough, just a sleek black cylinder. I put the wireless earbud in my ear and pointed the lens down at my son. The effect was instantaneous. The roar of the dining hall faded into a dull hum, and their voices cut through crystal clear. It was as if I was sitting right next to them. I tapped the record button on the app on my phone. "You are being dramatic," Marcus Tiffany's voice hissed in my ear. It was sharp and dismissive. "Lower your voice, people are staring." "I don't care who is staring," Marcus snapped, though he kept his voice low. "I care that my card just got declined at the bar. And now I get a notification that you spent $3,000 at the Michael Kors boutique an hour ago. $3,000, Tiffany." "So what?" Tiffany replied, taking a sip of wine. "It is a limited edition. I needed it for the photo shoot tomorrow on the island. It goes with my swimsuit." "It is an investment, Marcus. You have to spend money to make money. My followers want to see luxury, not budget bin garbage." Investment. Marcus let out a bitter laugh. "You are delusional. We don't have the money, Tiffany. That $3,000 was part of the transfer from Dad. That was supposed to be for the emergency fund in case something went wrong with the house while we were gone. Or, to pay off the interest on the other cards." I froze. My hand gripped the table edge. He admitted it. He knew exactly where the money came from. He knew it was the money I had wired him for the foundation repair. "Oh, stop whining," Tiffany said, waving her fork at him. "Your dad doesn't know what he wired that money for. The old man is senile, Marcus. He writes checks and forgets about them an hour later. He is sitting on that farm rotting away. He probably thinks he paid for a new tractor." "He is not senile," Marcus muttered, but there was no defense in his voice, just resignation. "He is sharp. If he finds out—" "He won't find out," Tiffany interrupted. "Who is going to tell him?" "Maya." "Please. That kid is terrified of her own shadow. Besides, even if he does find out, what is he going to do? He is 75 years old. He has one foot in the grave. When he kicks the bucket, it all comes to us anyway. We are just spending our inheritance a little early. Consider it in advance." I felt a coldness spread through my chest that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. It was the chill of absolute clarity. For years, I had told myself that Marcus was just weak, that he was a good boy who had fallen under the spell of a demanding woman. I told myself he was a victim of her ambition. I made excuses for him. I paid his bills. I fixed his mistakes. But listening to him now, listening to his silence in the face of her cruelty, I realized the truth. He wasn't a victim. He was a volunteer. He sat there and let her call me senile. He sat there and let her talk about my death as a payday. He didn't defend me. He didn't defend his daughter. He was only worried about getting caught. "And what happens when the money runs out?" Marcus asked. "Because it will run out, Tiff. This trip alone cost us 15 grand. We are bleeding dry." "Then you go back to the farm and cry a little," Tiffany said, rolling her eyes. "Tell him the roof leaked. Tell him the tractor broke. Tell him you need money for Maya's braces. Use the kid. He has a soft spot for her pathetic little orphan routine. He will write another check. He always does. He is a cash cow, Marcus. Milk him." I stopped the recording. I didn't need to hear anymore. I took the earbud out of my ear. My hands were steady. My heart was slow and heavy, beating with the rhythmic thud of a judge's gavel. I looked down at them one last time. They weren't my family. They were parasites. And I had been the host, feeding them, keeping them warm, protecting them from the harshness of the world while they sharpened their teeth to bite the hand that fed them. I looked at Maya. She was coloring a picture of a house with a sun and flowers and 2 stick figures holding hands, a big one and a little one. I am done milking Marcus. I packed up the device. I touched Maya's shoulder gently. "Come on, sweetheart," I said. "Let's go back to the room. I have a phone call to make." We walked back to the owner's suite in silence. The ship felt different now. Before it was a vessel of pursuit. Now it was a courtroom. I walked out onto the private balcony. The ocean was dark and vast, stretching out to the horizon. I pulled out my cell phone. I dialed a number in Atlanta. It was late there, but I knew he would answer. Arthur Sterling was not just a lawyer. He was a shark in a 3-piece suit. He had handled my corporate contracts for 30 years. He knew where every body was buried because he had helped dig the holes. Elijah Arthur answered, his voice crisp and alert. "To what do I owe the pleasure at this hour? I need you to execute the nuclear option, Arthur." There was a pause. Silence on the line. Then the sound of a pen scratching on paper. "Explain." "I am sending you an audio file," I said. "I want you to listen to it. Then I want you to draft a restraining order, a petition for emergency custody, and a forensic accounting audit of every dime I have ever given Marcus Jefferson." "Done. What else?" "I want you to contact the bank, the mortgage on Marcus's house. Who holds the note?" "You do, Elijah. You bought the note through the shell company 3 years ago when he defaulted the first time. You hold the deed. Good. Foreclose on it." "Excuse me." "You heard me, Arthur. Foreclose. Eviction notice. Immediate possession. I want the locks changed by tomorrow morning. I want their assets frozen. I want the supplementary credit cards canceled. I want the car lease, which is in my name, terminated and the vehicle repossessed." Elijah Arthur's voice softened slightly. "This is scorched earth. If you do this, you will leave them with nothing. They will be homeless. They will be destitute." I looked out at the dark water. I thought about the pantry. I thought about the fever. I thought about the phrase, "milk him." "They are not homeless." "Arthur?" I said, my voice devoid of any emotion. They have a very nice cabin on a cruise ship for the next 12 days. Let them enjoy it. Because when they step off this boat, I want them to step into a world where they own absolutely nothing. I understand. I will have the papers filed within the hour. The house will be sealed by noon tomorrow. And Arthur? Yes. Draft a new will. Leave everything to a trust for Maya Jefferson. Appoint yourself as executor until she is 25. Marcus gets $1. I want it explicit. I want him to know I didn't forget him. I want him to know I remembered him perfectly. Consider it done, Elijah. I hung up the phone. The sea breeze felt cool on my face. I didn't feel guilt. I didn't feel sadness. I felt the satisfying click of a lock snapping shut. I walked back inside. Maya was asleep on the massive bed, looking tiny in the middle of the Egyptian cotton sheets. I sat in the armchair by the window and watched her sleep. My son wanted an inheritance. I was going to give him one. I was going to give him the consequences of his own actions, and I was going to make sure he paid every single cent. The psychological warfare began with a vintage Pinot Noir. It was a bottle from the ship cellar, overpriced and pretentious, exactly the kind of wine Tiffany liked to post photos of but could not actually distinguish from vinegar. I sat at the mahogany desk in the owner's suite, the balcony doors open to let in the salt air. James, my butler, stood at attention, his hands clasped behind his back. He did not ask why I was writing a note on the ship's stationery with my left hand to disguise the penmanship. He did not ask why I was sending a $300 bottle of wine to a cramped interior stateroom on Deck 8. He simply waited. I folded the heavy cream-colored paper. The message was short. Drink up. It is the last luxury you will taste. Tomorrow, the well runs dry. Signed, The Foundation. I slid the note under the ribbon on the bottleneck. James, I said, handing him the bottle. I need you to deliver this to stateroom 804. Do not say who it is from. Just place it on the mat and leave. Can you do that? Consider it done, mister. Consider it. Jefferson James said, taking the bottle with a slight bow. As soon as he left, I picked up the listening device. I had set it up on the balcony railing, pointing it down toward the general vicinity of their cabin, though I knew the range wouldn't penetrate the steel decks. However, I had another way in. Before I left their house, I had done one more thing. I had linked Marcus's Apple ID to my old iPad. He used the same password for everything. I could see his texts, I could see his emails, and right now I was watching the blue bubbles pop up on the screen. 10 minutes later, the text came through to Tiffany's phone. Babe, did you order wine? I smiled. They were in the room. I switched to the audio feed from the bug I had planted. I had managed to slip a second smaller transmitter, a simple tile tracker with a microphone modification I picked up at the spy shop, into the side pocket of the Louis Vuitton bag while they were distracted at the pool. It wasn't perfect, but in the quiet of their cabin it worked. I put the earbud in. Static. Then the sound of a door closing. Look at this, Marcus. Tiffany's voice came through, tinny but audible. It is a Pinot. Vintage. This must be a welcome gift from the cruise line. I told you being a gold member had perks. There is a note, Marcus said. His voice was shaky. I heard the rustle of paper. Then silence. A long, heavy silence. What does it mean? Tiffany asked, her voice losing its excitement. The foundation. What foundation? Marcus's breathing grew heavy. It sounded like a man hyperventilating. The foundation, Tiff. The money. The money Dad gave me. I told him it was for the house foundation. So Tiffany snapped. So what? He is in Georgia. We are in the Bahamas. How would he know? Maybe the contractor called him. Marcus stammered. Maybe the bank flagged the transfer. Or maybe it is the loan sharks. I told you I borrowed from some bad guys before I asked Dad. Maybe they know I am here. Maybe they know I spent the money. He was spiraling. Good. You are being paranoid, Tiffany said, the sound of a cork popping echoing in my ear. She was opening the bottle. Listen to yourself. A loan shark isn't going to send you a bottle of wine on a cruise ship, Marcus. They would just break your legs. This is clearly a mistake. Room service probably mixed up the room numbers. Some rich guy in a suite ordered this and we got lucky. But the note, Marcus insisted. It says the well runs dry. It is a metaphor, Marcus. Or a joke. Just drink the wine. It is free. Stop ruining the vibe. I heard the clink of glass. She was drinking it. She was drinking the wine that represented the destruction of her lifestyle, and she called it a vibe. I took the earbud out. Phase 1 was complete. Marcus was rattled. He was looking over his shoulder. But Tiffany was still comfortable. She was still wrapped in her armor of denial and entitlement. I needed to pierce that armor. I needed to remind her that this wasn't about money. This was about a child. I looked over at Maya. She was sitting on the floor playing with a doll I had bought her at the gift shop. It was a simple rag doll with yarn hair and a button nose. It looked remarkably like the Mr. Bear she had left in the pantry, but cleaner, newer. "Maya, baby," I said gently. "Can I borrow your doll for a little while? I need to show it something." Maya looked up. "Will you bring it back, Grandpa?" "I promise. I am just going to take it for a little walk." She handed it to me, trusting me completely. That trust was a heavy weight, but I carried it gladly. I waited until midnight. The ship was quiet, the party moving to the nightclubs on the upper decks. The corridors of Deck 8, where the regular cabins were located, were long, narrow, and silent. I took the service elevator down, wearing a maintenance worker's coveralls I had acquired from a laundry cart. I pulled my cap low. I walked down the hallway, counting the numbers. 802, 803, 804. I stopped. I could hear the faint sound of a television through the thin metal door. They were in there, probably sleeping off the wine. I took the doll. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small red ribbon. I tied it around the doll's neck. Not tight, just a bow, identical to the one Maya wore in her hair on the day they adopted her, the day Tiffany took 1,000 photos and captioned them "Mommy's little present." I placed the doll on the doormat. It sat there staring at the door with its button eyes accusing and silent. Then I knocked. 3 sharp raps. I didn't run. I walked briskly around the corner and slipped into the stairwell, leaving the door open just a crack so I could hear. The door to 804 opened. "Who is it?" Marcus's voice grumbled, sleep heavy and irritable. I heard him step out. Then a gasp, a sharp intake of air that sounded like he had been punched. "Tiffany," he hissed. "Tiffany, get out here." "What is it now, Marcus? I am trying to sleep. Look." I heard the rustle of fabric as she moved to the door, then silence. A silence far deeper and colder than the one before. "Is that Tiffany's?" voice trembled. "That looks like—" "It is Maya's," Marcus whispered. "That is the doll I bought her, the one she sleeps with. Why is it here?" "Maybe she packed it," Tiffany said, her voice rising in pitch. "Maybe it got mixed in with the luggage. It is sitting on the doormat, Tiff, standing up, with a ribbon. Who put it here?" I leaned closer to the crack in the door. I wanted to hear the fear. I wanted to taste it. "Someone is watching us," Marcus whispered. The note, the wine, now this. Someone knows. Tiffany didn't dismiss him this time. She didn't call him paranoid. "Pick it up," she hissed. "Get it inside. Don't leave it there." "I am not touching it," Marcus said. It is creepy. Just grab the damn doll." I heard a scuffle, then the door slammed shut. The lock clicked, then the deadbolt, then the chain. I smiled in the darkness of the stairwell. They were locked in a windowless room with a doll that reminded them of the daughter they abandoned. They were drinking wine that tasted like theft. They were starting to realize that the ocean wasn't big enough to hide them. I walked back up the stairs, stripping off the coveralls. I felt lighter. When I got back to the suite, Maya was fast asleep. I placed a new doll I had bought, a backup just in case, next to her on the pillow. I went out to the balcony and looked at the moon reflecting off the black water. Tiffany was panic-stricken. Marcus was terrified. They were turning on each other. The pressure was building. But they still had the room. They still had the food. They still had the illusion of safety. Tomorrow I would take that away too. I pulled out my phone and composed a text to Arthur Sterling, my lawyer. "Execute Phase 2, I typed. "Freeze the accounts. Send the notification to the ship's purser. I want his card to bounce when he tries to buy his morning coffee." I hit send. The game of cat and mouse was over. The trap was set. Now I just had to wait for the snap. The morning sun beat down on the deck of the Royal Caribbean ship, but inside stateroom 804 the atmosphere was cold enough to freeze water. I knew this because I had not slept. I had spent the night in the comfortable embrace of the owner's suite king-sized bed, but my mind had been 10 decks below, imagining the panic festering in that windowless box. I sat on my private balcony enjoying a breakfast of smoked salmon and freshly squeezed orange juice while Maya colored in her new book. She looked peaceful. The shadows under her eyes were fading, replaced by the resilience of youth. She didn't ask about her parents this morning. She just asked if we could go see the dolphins later. Down below, the reality I had engineered was taking hold. I checked the timestamp on my iPad. It was 9 in the morning. Marcus would be trying to check the house cameras right about now. He was a creature of habit, and his anxiety would be peaking after the incident with the doll. I imagined him sitting on the edge of that narrow bunk bed, phone in hand, tapping the app icon. I imagined the little spinning wheel of death on his screen. I had accessed the system remotely at 3 in the morning. I didn't just turn it off. I changed the admin password, the recovery email, and the 2-factor authentication phone number. I locked him out of his own home digitally, just as he had locked Maya in physically. I pulled up the audio feed from the bug in their room. The connection was clear. Damn it, Marcus's voice cracked with frustration. It is not loading. What do you mean it is not loading? Tiffany snapped. Her voice sounded ragged, like she hadn't slept either. Refresh it. Use the ship's Wi-Fi. We paid $40 for the internet package. Marcus, make it work. I am trying, Tiff. It keeps saying authentication failed. It says the password was changed 3 hours ago. Changed. Tiffany's voice rose an octave. By who? Who is at the house, Marcus? Is it a burglar? Is it the police? I don't know, Marcus yelled back, and then I heard the sound of a phone being thrown against a mattress. I don't know, okay. Maybe it is a glitch. Maybe the power went out. A power outage doesn't change a password, you idiot, Tiffany screamed. Someone is in the house. Someone knows we are gone. Oh my God, my jewelry is in the safe. My designer bags are in the closet. If we get robbed, insurance won't cover it because we didn't set the alarm correctly. It was telling that her first thought was her jewelry, not her daughter. Not once did she say, oh my God, Maya is alone with a stranger. She worried about her handbags. Call the neighbor, she ordered. Call Mrs. Henderson. Ask her to look through the window. I smiled. Mrs. Henderson. Betty Henderson was 72 years old, a retired school librarian who lived next door to Marcus. She had seen Tiffany ignore Maya for 3 years. She had seen Maya playing alone in the yard while Tiffany took selfies with Leo. Betty Henderson despised my daughter-in-law with a polite southern intensity that was terrifying to behold. When I had called her from the plane yesterday and told her what happened, she didn't gasp. She didn't ask questions. She just said, "Tell me what you need me to do, Elijah." Now she was about to deliver the performance of a lifetime. I heard Marcus dialing. The call went to speakerphone. Hello, Mrs. Henderson's voice came through shaky and frail, perfect for the role. Mrs. Henderson, it is Marcus. Marcus Jefferson from next door. Oh, Marcus, I thought you were on a business trip. Is everything all right? Yes, everything is fine. Marcus lied, his voice tight. Listen, we are having some trouble with our security system. It went offline. We just wanted to check if you could look over at the house. Do you see anything strange? Are the lights on? There was a long pause. I could feel Marcus holding his breath. Well, dear, Mrs. Henderson said slowly, it is very strange that you called. I was just looking out my kitchen window a few minutes ago. The house is pitch black, not a single light. Okay, Marcus exhaled. That is good. That means the power is probably out. But, Mrs. Henderson continued, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, that is not the strange part, Marcus. I went out to get my paper and I stood by the fence, and I could swear I heard something coming from inside. What? Marcus choked out. What did you hear? It sounded like crying deer. Like a child crying. It sounded just like little Maya. But that is impossible, right? You took Maya with you. You told me you were all going on a trip. So it couldn't be her. Silence. Absolute suffocating silence in stateroom 804. Unless Mrs. Henderson added the hook, sinking deep. Unless someone broke in and, well, I don't want to scare you, Marcus, but it sounded like she was screaming for her grandpa. Should I call the police for you, dear? Should I ask them to go do a welfare check? No, Marcus shouted too quickly. No, Mrs. Henderson, do not call the police. It must have been the TV. We probably left the TV on. And the power outage. It must have reset the system. Please do not call the police. We don't want to bother them. Well, if you say so, dear. But it was very unsettling. Just chilling. Anyway, enjoy your trip. The line went dead. I could practically hear the blood draining from Marcus's face. She heard her Tiffany whispered. She heard Maya screaming. Marcus, she is still in there. She is in the dark and she is screaming. Or Marcus's voice was trembling so hard it vibrated in my ear. Or someone is in there with her. Someone who changed the password. Someone who put the doll at our door. We have to go back, Tiffany said. We have to get off this ship. We have to go home. We can't, Marcus snapped. We are at sea, Tiffany. The next stop is St. Thomas in 2 days. We are trapped here. Trapped. The word hung in the air. Then the crying started. But it wasn't Maya. It was Leo. I want to go to the water park, Leo wailed. You promised. You said we would go to the Splashaway Bay today. Why are we sitting in the dark? I hate this room. It smells like feet. Shut up, Leo, Tiffany shrieked. Just shut up for 5 minutes. I don't want to shut up, Leo screamed back, throwing something hard against the wall. I want ice cream. I want to swim. You guys are being mean. I wish Grandpa was here. He would take me to the pool. Don't you dare mention him, Tiffany yelled. This is all his fault. If that cheap old man had just given us more money, we wouldn't be in this mess. We could have hired a nanny. We wouldn't have had to leave her. You are blaming him. Marcus laughed, a hysterical edge to his voice. You are blaming my dad because we abandoned a 7-year-old. You are unbelievable, Tiffany. Me. Tiffany's voice turned venomous. You were the one who locked the door, Marcus. You were the one who changed the code. Don't you try to pin this on me. You are the man. You are supposed to fix things. But look at you. You are useless. You are broke. You are scared of your own shadow. No wonder your dad likes the adopted kid better. Even he can see you are a failure. I heard a loud thud as if someone had been shoved. Stop it, Marcus warned. Make me, Tiffany taunted. Go ahead. Be a man for once in your life. Fix this, Marcus. Make the camera work. Make the neighbors stop hearing things. Make the money appear. But you can't, can you? You are just a little boy playing dress-up with Daddy's credit card. I took the earbud out. I didn't want to hear anymore. The toxicity was leaking out of the device, staining the air in my beautiful suite. They were turning on each other faster than I had anticipated. The pressure of the guilt, the fear of discovery, and the looming financial ruin was cracking the thin veneer of their marriage. They were showing their true selves, ugly, selfish, and weak. And Leo? My heart broke a little for the boy. He was spoiled, yes. He was entitled. But he was 8 years old. He was a product of his environment. He was learning that love was transactional, that happiness was bought, and that when things got hard, you screamed and blamed everyone else. I looked at Maya. She was standing by the glass door looking out at the ocean. She looked calm. She looked free. Grandpa, she said, turning to me. Yes, baby girl. Are we going to have dinner with them tonight? I stood up, buttoning my suit jacket. I checked my reflection. I looked like a man who was about to close the biggest deal of his life. Not with them, Maya, I said. Maya, but near them. I walked over to the desk and picked up the phone. I dialed the concierge. Good morning. Mr. Jefferson, the concierge, answered immediately. How can I assist you? I need a reservation for tonight, I said. The chef's table. The chef's table, sir. That is the most exclusive dining experience on the ship. It is fully booked for the entire voyage. I am aware, I said. But I happen to know that the table reserved for the captain's special guests is often held until noon. I would like that table. Center of the room, 7 o'clock. Let me check with the maitre d'. One moment, please. I waited, humming a low tune. Mr. Jefferson, the concierge, returned, his voice breathless. We have cleared the table for you. It will be an honor to host you. Thank you. And one more thing. Yes, sir. I believe my son Marcus Jefferson is dining in the main hall tonight. I would like you to arrange a slight change in his seating. Put him at the table directly adjacent to the glass partition that separates the main dining room from the chef's table. I want him to have a view. I understand, sir. It will be arranged. I hung up. The chef's table was a glass-enclosed sanctuary of gastronomy located right in the middle of the main dining room. It was designed so that the people eating there could be seen by everyone else but not touched. It was a fishbowl of opulence. Marcus and Tiffany would be sitting inches away, separated by a pane of glass. They would be eating the standard banquet food, trying to keep up appearances while their world crumbled. And on the other side of the glass, eating truffle risotto and drinking vintage champagne, they would see us. They would see the father they betrayed. They would see the daughter they abandoned. They would see us happy. They would see us rich. And they would see that they could not reach us. I walked over to Maya and held out my hand. Come on, Maya, I said. We need to go shopping. Shopping, Grandpa. Again. Yes, I said, smiling. You need a dress for dinner, something that sparkles, something that says you are the most important person in the room. Because tonight, baby girl, we are not just going to dinner, we are going to make a statement. And when they see us, when they realize that the ghosts haunting them are flesh and blood, the panic they are feeling right now will seem like a pleasant dream compared to the nightmare of facing me. Let's go. The giant is fully awake now, and he is hungry. The dress was midnight blue silk covered in sequins that caught the light like 1,000 trapped stars. It was a custom piece from the ship's most exclusive boutique, the kind of garment that wasn't just sewn but engineered to make a little girl feel like a queen. When Maya stepped out of the dressing room in the owner's suite and twirled looking at herself in the floor-to-ceiling mirror, I saw the last remnants of the frightened child in the pantry vanish. She stood taller. She didn't look like a victim of abandonment anymore. She looked like a Jefferson. I adjusted my own bow tie in the mirror. The tuxedo was vintage, bespoke, tailored for me in London 30 years ago. It still fit perfectly. It was armor made of wool and silk. I placed a fresh white pocket square in my breast pocket and fastened the platinum cufflinks. I looked at the man in the glass. The farmer was gone. The grandfather was gone. Standing there was the man who used to make union bosses sweat and competitors fold. "Ready, baby girl?" I asked, holding out my arm. Maya took it, her small hand vanishing in the crook of my elbow. She looked up at me, her eyes shining. "I am ready, Grandpa. Do I look okay?" "You look dangerous," I said, winking. "You look like you own the place." And tonight, in a way, we did. We took the private elevator down to Deck 5. The doors opened and the hum of the captain's night spilled in. It was a sea of tuxedos and evening gowns, a parade of people trying their hardest to look important. The air smelled of expensive perfume, prime rib, and desperation. We didn't walk, we glided. The crowd parted for us not because they knew who we were, but because human beings have an instinct for power. They sensed it in the way I walked, the way I held my head, the way Maya beamed with a confidence that belied her 7 years. We approached the main dining room. It was a cavernous 2-story space filled with crystal chandeliers and the clatter of 3,000 people eating. But we weren't heading for the main floor. We were heading for the chef's table, the glass-enclosed sanctuary in the center of the room, visible to everyone but accessible to almost no one. The maitre d' saw us coming. He straightened his spine and hurried forward, bowing slightly. "Mr. Jefferson, Mrs. Jefferson, your table is ready, right this way." He led us through the velvet ropes. I could feel the eyes on us. People stopped eating to watch. They whispered, "Who is that? Is he famous? Is that a diplomat?" We passed the glass partition, and there they were. Marcus and Tiffany were seated at a table right next to the glass, just as I had arranged. They were close enough that I could see the sweat beading on Marcus's forehead, close enough to see the strain in Tiffany's smile. They were trying so hard. Marcus was wearing a rental tuxedo that was a size too big, the sleeves hanging over his hands. Tiffany was wearing a silver dress that looked flashy from a distance but cheap up close, the kind with sequins that scratch your skin. She had her phone propped up against the centerpiece, a ring light clamped to the breadbasket. She was live. Of course she was. I stopped Maya just outside their line of sight. "Wait here for a second, sweetheart," I whispered. "Let me say hello first." I stepped closer to the glass partition, moving into the periphery of their table. Tiffany was talking to her phone, her voice pitched high and fake, performing for her audience. "Hey guys, having the most amazing captain's dinner tonight. Just look at this view. Look at this food. We are living our best life. So blessed. Just wish our little Maya was here to see it, but she is resting up, getting better. Love you, baby girl." She blew a kiss to the camera. That was my cue. I stepped fully into view, right behind her shoulder, looming over the table like a thunderhead. I didn't say a word at first. I just stood there, letting my shadow fall over her phone. Tiffany frowned, noticing the change in lighting. She turned around, annoyance flashing on her face, ready to scold a waiter for interrupting her broadcast. Her eyes met my belt buckle. She looked up past the silk cummerbund, past the perfectly starched shirt, past the black bow tie until she met my eyes. The color drained from her face so fast it looked like a physical blow. Her mouth opened but no sound came out. Her eyes went wide, pupils dilating in sheer animal panic. Her hand, which had been adjusting her hair, went limp. The phone slipped from her fingers. It hit the edge of the table with a loud clatter, bounced off a bread plate, and crashed onto the floor. The screen cracked, but the live stream kept running, broadcasting the ceiling and the sound of her world ending. Marcus, who had been staring morosely into his wine glass, looked up at the sound. He saw Tiffany's face. He turned slowly, following her gaze. When he saw me, he choked. He literally choked. He inhaled a mouthful of cheap Merlot and started coughing violently, hacking and sputtering red wine, spraying onto the white tablecloth like blood. I smiled. It was a cold, razor-sharp smile. "Hello, children," I said, my voice smooth and carrying easily over the din of the dining room. Marcus wheezed, clutching his chest, his eyes bulging. Dad. I stepped closer, placing one hand on the back of Tiffany's chair, leaning in, as if sharing a secret. "Small world, isn't it?" I said. "I must say I am surprised. I didn't know that the money I gave you for foundation repairs came with a dress code." Tiffany was trembling. Her hands were shaking so hard she had to grip the table to stop them. She looked from me to the phone on the floor, then back to me, terrified that her followers were hearing this. "Dad," Marcus gasped, wiping wine from his chin with a napkin. What are you doing here?" "Me." I laughed dryly. "Oh, I am just taking my granddaughter out for ice cream. We decided to upgrade the venue." Granddaughter Tiffany whispered the word like a curse. I turned and extended my hand. "Maya, come say hello to your parents." Maya stepped out from behind me. She walked into the light, the sequins on her dress exploding with brilliance. She looked like a princess from a fairy tale, but her eyes were hard. She didn't look scared. She looked at them with the same cool detachment I felt. She stood next to me, holding my hand, staring at the woman who had left her in a pantry. "Hi, Mommy," Maya said. Tiffany looked at the dress. It was a designer piece, silk and tulle hand, beaded, elegant and obviously expensive. It made Tiffany's rental dress look like a costume. Tiffany stammered. "Baby, you are here." "I am here," Maya said, her voice clear and loud. Grandpa broke the window. He saved me. The people at the nearby tables had stopped eating. The silence was spreading outward from our table, a ripple effect of curiosity and scandal. Everyone was watching. Leo, who had been playing with a game under the table, crawled out to see what was happening. He stood up, brushing crumbs off his ill-fitting suit. He looked at Maya. He looked at her dress. He looked at the way she was standing tall and proud, holding my hand. He turned red, his face scrunched up in that familiar expression of spoiled outrage. "That is Maya," he screamed, pointing a finger at her. "Why is she here? Why is she wearing that?" "Hush," Leo, Marcus hissed, grabbing his son's arm. "No," Leo shouted, yanking his arm away. "It is not fair. That is a princess dress. Why does she get a princess dress? You said she was in trouble. You said she had to stay home. Why does she look better than me?" His scream echoed through the dining room. It was the perfect punctuation mark to the scene. The biological son, the golden child, screaming in jealousy because the discarded daughter was finally shining. I looked down at Leo. I didn't feel anger toward him, only pity. He was a product of their rot. "She looks better than you, Leo," I said calmly, "because she is with me. And I take care of my family." I looked back at Marcus. He was pale, sweating his rental tuxedo, looking like a straitjacket. "Enjoy your dinner, Marcus," I said. "I hear the chicken is adequate. We have a reservation at the chef's table. The truffle risotto is supposed to be excellent." I turned to Tiffany, who was still staring at her cracked phone on the floor, terrified to pick it up, terrified to see the comments rolling in. "Oh, and Tiffany," I added, "you might want to check your stream. I think you forgot to say goodbye to your fans." I offered my arm to Maya. "Shall we?" "Darling?" I asked. "Yes, Grandpa," she said, lifting her chin. "I am hungry." We turned our backs on them. We walked away, leaving them in the wreckage of their own lies. Behind us, I heard the murmur of the crowd, the whispers of judgment starting to swirl. I heard Marcus hissing at Tiffany. I heard Leo crying. We walked through the glass doors into the chef's table. The sound of the chaos outside faded instantly, replaced by the soft clinking of crystal and the hum of exclusivity. I sat Maya down at the head of the table. The waiter poured her sparkling apple cider into a champagne flute. "To us, baby girl," I said, raising my glass. Maya clinked her glass against mine, a wide, genuine smile breaking across her face. "To us, Grandpa." I looked through the glass partition one last time. Marcus was holding his head in his hands. Tiffany was frantically typing on her phone, probably trying to delete the video that was already being screen recorded and shared by thousands. They were trapped in a fishbowl of their own making, exposed for the world to see. And I was just getting started. The dinner was just the appetizer. The main course was going to be their total financial eviction, and I had a very big appetite. I watched from the other side of the glass partition as Tiffany scrambled for her phone. The device was lying face up on the carpet, the screen spiderwebbed with cracks, but the light was still on. The live stream was still running. I could see the comments scrolling up the screen, a blur of confusion and shock from her followers who had just heard me expose their entire charade. Tiffany snatched the phone up her hands, trembling so violently that the image on the screen must have been shaking like an earthquake. She looked at the camera, then she looked at me, then she looked at Maya, sitting like a queen at the head of the chef's table. I saw the gears turning in her mind. It was a desperate, frantic calculation. She knew she could not delete the video now. Too many people were watching. Too many people had heard. If she ended the stream, she would look guilty. If she ran away, she would look guilty. She had only one option left. She had to act. She had to perform the greatest role of her life. She wiped the panic from her face, replacing it with a mask of tearful, overjoyed surprise. It was grotesque to watch. She smoothed her cheap silver dress, fixed her hair in one swift motion, and turned the camera back to herself. "Oh my God, you guys." She gasped into the microphone, her voice pitching up into that shrill influencer register she used when she was selling diet tea or face cream. "You are not going to believe this. It is a miracle. A literal miracle." She started walking toward us. She bypassed the maitre d', who stepped forward to stop her but hesitated when he saw the phone. She ducked under the velvet rope that separated the common dining room from our private sanctuary. Marcus stayed at the table, his head in his hands, but Tiffany was on a mission. She marched right up to our table, the camera held high, aimed directly at Maya. "Maya, baby," she shrieked. I stood up, intending to block her, but Maya put a hand on my arm. She looked up at me with those serious, intelligent eyes. "It is okay, Grandpa," she whispered. "Let her come." I sat back down. Maya was right. If I stopped Tiffany, it would look like I was the aggressor. If I let her speak, she would hang herself. Tiffany reached the table. She dropped to her knees beside Maya's chair, ignoring the waiters who were holding trays of appetizers, looking horrified. She positioned herself so that Maya and the camera were all in the frame. "Oh, my sweet baby girl," Tiffany sobbed, reaching out to grab Maya's shoulders. The tears were instant and plentiful. She really was a talented actress. "Mommy missed you so, so much. I was just telling everyone how my heart was broken because you were sick at home. But look at you. You are here." She turned to the camera, a wide, wet smile plastered on her face. "You guys look. It is Grandpa Elijah. He is such a prankster. He told us he was staying at the farm, but he must have planned this whole thing as a surprise. He brought Maya to the ship to surprise us for the captain's dinner. Oh, Grandpa, you really got us. You terrified me, acting like you were mad. Best prank ever." She looked at me, her eyes pleading, daring me to play along, daring me to save her reputation for the sake of peace, daring me to be the nice, quiet old man who always smoothed things over. She squeezed Maya tight, pulling the child into a hug that looked affectionate, but I could see her fingers digging into Maya's silk dress. "Mommy is so happy you are better, sweetie," Tiffany cooed. "Tell the camera hi. Tell everyone how much you love the surprise." The dining room had gone silent. The wealthy guests at the chef's table, couples who had paid thousands for this meal, put down their forks. They were watching the performance, sensing the falseness radiating off the woman in the silver dress. Maya sat rigid in her chair. She did not hug back. She did not smile. She waited until Tiffany pulled back slightly to check the camera angle. Then Maya moved. She stood up. She took a step back, breaking Tiffany's hold. She brushed off her shoulder where Tiffany had touched her, as if brushing off dirt. She looked directly into the lens of the cracked phone. Then she looked directly into Tiffany's eyes. "You are lying," Mommy Maya said. Her voice was not loud, but in the silence of that room it carried like a gunshot. It was clear, steady, and devoid of fear. Tiffany's smile faltered. "Maya, sweetie, what are you talking about? We are just so happy to—" "No," Maya interrupted, her voice rising, gaining strength. "You are lying. Grandpa did not bring me as a surprise. You left me." The air was sucked out of the room. A woman at the next table gasped, clutching her pearls. "Maya, honey, you are confused." Tiffany laughed nervously, trying to grab Maya's hand again. "You were sick, remember? You had the flu." "I was not sick," Maya said, stepping back again out of Tiffany's reach. "I was sleeping. It was 2:30 in the morning. It was raining and there was thunder. You and Daddy and Leo took your suitcases and you locked the door." Tiffany's face went pale beneath her heavy makeup. Maya, stop it. You are imagining things. I am not imagining it, Maya shouted, her small fists clenched at her sides. I woke up because I was scared. I went to your room and you were gone. I went to the kitchen and there was a note. You left me a note, Mommy. You said you went on a business trip. Tiffany tried to speak, but no words came out. She looked at the phone in her hand. The comments were scrolling so fast now they were a blur. I tried to get out. Maya continued, her voice trembling with the memory. I tried to open the door, but you changed the code. I tried to call Mrs. Henderson, but the phone lines were down. I was alone, Mommy. I was in the dark, and I was alone. Tears began to stream down Maya's face, but she did not look away. She stared her mother down. I had to break the window, Maya said. I took the heavy thing from the fireplace and I smashed the glass. I had to crawl out into the rain. I cut my knee. Look. She lifted the hem of her sparkling dress. There, just above her shin, was a fresh bandage Walter had applied that morning. I had to run to the neighbor's house in the storm, Maya sobbed. Why did you leave me, Mommy? Why did you take Leo and leave me? Is it because I am not real? The question hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Tiffany was frozen. She was kneeling on the floor, the camera still broadcasting everything. She looked around the room. The faces of the diners were not friendly. They were horrified. These were people who had children, who had grandchildren. They were looking at Tiffany not with admiration, but with revulsion. She turned to me, her eyes wide and panic-stricken. Elijah, please, she whispered. Make her stop. Tell them she is making it up. Tell them she is a troubled child. I stood up slowly, towering over her. She is not troubled, Tiffany. I said, my voice cold enough to freeze the ocean. She is truthful. And you are done. I looked at the phone in her hand. Look at the screen, Tiffany, I said. Look at what your fans think of you now. She looked down. Her hand was shaking so hard the phone was vibrating. I could see the comments from where I stood. Monster. Child abuser. Someone call the police. I hope you rot in jail. Unfollowing. You make me sick. The stream of hate was endless. The carefully curated image she had spent years building, the brand of the perfect mother, the lifestyle she had stolen my money to maintain it, was all dissolving in real time. Tiffany tried to stand up, but her legs gave out. She stumbled, catching herself on the edge of the table. She looked at Marcus, who was still sitting on the other side of the glass, staring at her with his mouth open. He did not move to help her. She looked back at Maya. Maya, please, she begged, reaching out a hand. Mommy loves you. Maya looked at the hand, then she turned to me. She buried her face in my tuxedo jacket and wrapped her arms around my waist. Grandpa, she muffled into my coat. I want to go. I wrapped my arms around her, shielding her from the woman on the floor. We are staying right here, Maya, I said. We are going to eat our dinner. She is the one who is leaving. Tiffany let out a sound that was half sob, half scream. She scrambled to her feet. She tried to end the live stream, but her fingers were slick with sweat and shaking too hard. She tapped the screen frantically, but the phone slipped from her grasp. It hit the marble floor for the second time that night. This time it landed face down. The camera went dark, but the audio was still running. Everyone heard her scream. It wasn't a scream of remorse. It was a scream of selfish rage. You ruined everything, she shrieked at Maya. You stupid, ungrateful brat. I gave you a home. I gave you a life. And you ruined it. That was it. The final nail in the coffin. 2 security officers who had been alerted by the maitre d' finally pushed through the crowd. They were big, serious men. Ma'am, one of them said, taking Tiffany by the arm. You need to come with us. Get off me, she yelled, thrashing against his grip. Do you know who I am? I am a gold member. My father-in-law is Elijah Jefferson. Elijah, tell them. Tell them to unhand me. I looked at her. I looked at the security guard. I have never seen this woman before in my life, I said calmly. Please remove her from my table. She is upsetting my granddaughter. Tiffany's eyes bulged. Elijah. Take her away, I said, turning my back on her. The guards dragged her out. She was kicking and screaming, cursing my name, cursing Maya, cursing the ship. The entire dining room watched her go. When the doors finally closed behind her, a silence settled over the room. Then slowly, awkwardly, a woman at the next table started to clap. Then a man across the aisle joined in. Within seconds, the entire chef's table section was applauding. They weren't applauding the drama. They were applauding Maya. They were applauding the bravery of a little girl who stood up to a monster. I sat back down. I pulled Maya onto my lap. She was shaking, but she wasn't crying anymore. "Did I do good, Grandpa?" she asked. "You did perfect, baby girl," I said, kissing the top of her head. "You told the truth, and the truth set you free." I looked through the glass partition. Marcus was gone. He had fled, slipping away while everyone was watching Tiffany. He was running back to his hole, back to the darkness. But there was nowhere to run. The ship was a cage, and I held the keys. The waiter approached, looking shaken but professional. "Mr. Jefferson," he said, clearing his throat. "I apologize for the disturbance. Would you like us to bring the first course now?" "Yes, please," I said. "And bring my granddaughter a chocolate milk. In a crystal glass." "Yes, sir." "Immediately, sir." I looked at the cracked phone still lying on the floor where Tiffany had dropped it. I could hear faint voices coming from it. The live stream was still active, broadcasting the sounds of the dining room to the world. I leaned down and picked it up. The screen was shattered, but the camera lens on the back was still intact. I turned it around so it faced me. I looked directly into the lens. "My name is Elijah Jefferson," I said to the thousands of people watching. "And if you are wondering what happens to people who hurt children in my family, stay tuned. The show is just beginning." I pressed the end button. The screen went black. I handed the broken phone to the waiter. "Throw this in the ocean for me," I said. "With pleasure, sir." I turned back to Maya. She was smiling a small, tentative smile. "I am hungry, Grandpa," she said. "Me too, baby girl," I said. "Me too." Marcus scrambled away from the table, his chair screeching against the marble floor, a sound like nails on a chalkboard that made half the room wince. He looked around wildly, his eyes darting from the diners to the waiters to me. He was a rat trapped in a corner, realizing the cat wasn't playing with him anymore. The cat was going for the throat. "Dad," he hissed, lunging toward me, his hands reaching out not to hug me but to silence me. He grabbed my arm, his fingers digging into the wool of my tuxedo jacket. His grip was clammy and desperate, the grip of a drowning man trying to pull someone else under with him. "We are leaving," Marcus whispered, his voice cracking with a mixture of rage and terror. "Right now. We are going outside to the deck. We are going to talk about this in private like men. You are making a scene, Elijah. You are embarrassing the family." I looked down at his hand on my arm that had hoisted crates on the docks of Savannah in 90-degree heat, my arm that had built the fence around the farm he grew up on. I didn't move, I just looked at his hand until he realized the difference in our strength. I flexed my bicep just slightly and broke his hold with a shrug that was almost casual. I brushed the invisible speck of dust from my sleeve where he had touched me. "Private," I asked, my voice booming, filling the sudden silence of the dining hall. "You want privacy, Marcus? That is interesting. You didn't want privacy when you used my money to book a public cruise. You didn't want privacy when your wife live-streamed her lies to thousands of strangers online. You didn't want privacy when you left my granddaughter alone in the dark." I took a step toward him, and he took a stumbling step back, bumping into a waiter holding a tray of silver domes. "You spent my money publicly, Marcus," I said, my voice cold and hard as steel. "We are going to discuss it publicly." I turned away from him. I wasn't done. The dinner was ruined, but the show was just beginning. I walked toward the center of the room where a large flat-screen television was mounted above the service bar. It was usually used to display the daily menu or scenic photos of the ports of call. Tonight, it was going to display the truth. I caught the eye of the head bartender, a man I had slipped $300 to earlier that afternoon. He gave me a subtle nod and picked up a remote control. Tiffany was standing up now, swaying unsteadily in her cheap heels. Her face was a mask of running mascara and panic. "Stop him, Marcus!" she shrieked, pointing a trembling finger at me. "He is going to ruin us! Do something!" Marcus looked at me, then back at her. He was paralyzed. He was a man who had spent his whole life waiting for things to be handed to him, and now he had no idea how to fight for anything. I pulled my phone out of my pocket. I tapped the screen, casting the video file directly to the ship's network, which the bartender had kindly opened for me. The large screen above the bar flickered. The image of a tropical sunset vanished. In its place appeared a grainy black and white video time-stamped 2:30 in the morning 2 days ago. A collective gasp went through the dining room. It was the security footage from Marcus's hallway, the footage I had pulled from the server. On the screen, massive and undeniable, Marcus and Tiffany were dragging their suitcases to the door. They were laughing. Tiffany was checking her hair in the mirror, Leo was running around with his game, and the door to Maya's room was closed. I narrated the scene, my voice calm and dispassionate like a judge reading a verdict. "This is my son Marcus," I said, gesturing to the man sweating through his rental tuxedo, "and his wife Tiffany. This video was taken 48 hours ago. Look at them. Look how happy they are. They are sneaking out of their house in the middle of the night." On the screen, Marcus punched the code into the keypad, locking the door. "They are locking the door," I continued. "But they aren't locking it to keep thieves out. They are locking it to keep a 7-year-old child in." The video shifted. I swiped to the next file. This was the footage from the kitchen camera. It showed me breaking the window. It showed me climbing in. It showed me carrying a limp, feverish child out of a pantry. A woman at a nearby table covered her mouth with her hand and started to cry. A man in a military dress uniform stood up, his face turning red with anger, glaring at Marcus. "That is child abandonment," the man growled. "That is a felony." Marcus shrank under the gaze of the room. "It wasn't me," he stammered, addressing the strangers around him. We had a sitter. She didn't show up. It was a misunderstanding." "Liar," I said. I tapped my phone again. The video disappeared. Now the screen went black, but the audio feed kicked in. It was the recording from the spy device I had used earlier that day in the buffet. The speakers in the dining hall were high quality. They picked up every nuance, every sneer, every drop of venom in Tiffany's voice. "Your dad doesn't know what he wired that money for." Tiffany's voice boomed through the room, clear as a bell. "The old man is senile, Marcus. He writes checks and forgets about them an hour later." Tiffany froze. Her hands flew to her mouth, stifling a scream. She looked around the room, realizing that every person in the chef's table, every person in the main dining hall was hearing her soul laid bare. "He is rotting away," the recording continued. "He probably thinks he paid for a new tractor." Then Marcus's voice, weak, complicit. "He is not senile. He is sharp. If he finds out, he won't find out." Tiffany's recorded voice laughed, a cruel sound that echoed off the crystal chandeliers. "Who is going to tell him?" "Maya. Please, that kid is terrified of her own shadow. Besides, even if he does find out, what is he going to do? He is 75 years old. He has 1 foot in the grave. When he kicks the bucket, it all comes to us anyway. We are just spending our inheritance a little early. Consider it in advance." I paused the recording. The silence in the room was absolute. It was the silence of a tomb. It was the silence of judgment. I looked at Marcus. He was shaking his head, tears streaming down his face. Not tears of sorrow, but tears of a man watching his future evaporate. "And there it is," I said softly, "the inheritance." I walked back to my table where Maya was watching, wide-eyed but unafraid. She was drinking her chocolate milk, holding the glass with both hands. She looked like a judge in a sequined dress. "You wanted an advance, Marcus," I said. "You wanted to spend my money before I was in the ground. Well, congratulations, son. You got your wish. You spent it. You spent every single dime I will ever give you." I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a folded document. It was the email Arthur Sterling had sent me just before dinner. "This," I said, holding up the paper, "is a confirmation from my attorney. As of 1 hour ago, the deed to the house you live in, which is in my name, has been revoked. The locks are being changed as we speak. Your belongings will be placed in storage, paid for 30 days. After that, they will be auctioned." Marcus fell to his knees. It wasn't a theatrical gesture. His legs simply gave out. "Dad, no," he sobbed. "Please. We have nowhere to go. You have a suite on a cruise ship," I said, cold as ice. "Enjoy it. Because when you get off this boat, you are homeless. And you, Tiffany," I said, turning to her. She was staring at me, her eyes burning with a hatred so intense it felt like heat on my skin. She wasn't crying anymore. The mask had shattered completely, revealing the monster underneath. "You ruined everything," she screamed. Her voice was guttural, primal. "You jealous old man, you ruined my life. You ruined my brand. Your brand was a lie," I said. "And now everyone knows it," she snapped. With a shriek that sounded like a wounded animal, Tiffany lunged. She didn't go for Marcus. She didn't go for Maya. She came for me. She grabbed a steak knife from the nearest table, her fingers wrapping around the handle in a white-knuckled grip. She charged across the few feet of carpet separating us. The knife raised her teeth bared in a snarl. "I will kill you," she screamed. "I will kill you." I didn't flinch. I didn't move. I stood my ground, shielding Maya with my body, waiting for the impact. But she never reached me. A massive hand clamped down on her wrist, stopping her momentum instantly. It was the head of ship security, a man named Sven, who looked like he was carved out of granite. He had been waiting in the shadows, alerted by the captain who was dining nearby. Sven twisted her wrist with professional ease. The knife clattered to the floor, bouncing harmlessly away. Tiffany screamed in pain and frustration, kicking and thrashing like a toddler having a tantrum. "Let me go," she yelled, spitting at the guard. "He stole my money. He is the thief. Arrest him." Sven ignored her. He pinned her arms behind her back, securing her with a zip tie he pulled from his belt. Another guard stepped in, pulling Marcus up from the floor. Marcus didn't fight. He just hung his head, defeated, broken. "Get them out of here," I said, straightening my cuffs. "They are ruining my granddaughter's dinner." The guards dragged them away. Tiffany was still screaming, cursing my name, cursing the ship, cursing the world that had finally told her no. Marcus was dragged along silently, a ghost of a man. Leo was left standing there alone by the empty table, holding a bread roll, looking from his parents to me. He wasn't crying. He looked confused. He looked abandoned. I signaled to the maitre d'. "Please take the boy to the ship's youth center," I said quietly. "Make sure he is fed. Make sure he has a place to sleep. Put it on my bill." The maitre d' nodded, taking Leo's hand gently, leading him away from the scene of his parents' destruction. When the doors finally closed behind the screaming Tiffany, the room exhaled. I looked around. The diners were staring at us, but there was no judgment in their eyes anymore. There was respect. There was awe. A woman at the table next to us, an elderly lady with diamonds on her fingers and a cane by her side, slowly began to clap. Then her husband joined in. Then the table across from them. Within seconds, the entire chef's table section was applauding. It wasn't a polite golf clap. It was a thunderous ovation. They were standing up. They were cheering. They weren't cheering for the drama. They were cheering for justice. They were cheering for the old man who stood up for a child. They were cheering because for once the bad guys didn't win. I sat back down. My hands were trembling slightly now, the adrenaline fading, leaving behind a deep, bone-weary exhaustion. I looked at Maya. She was smiling. A real, genuine smile that reached her eyes. "Did you see that, Grandpa?" she asked. "The bad lady is gone." "Yes, baby girl," I said, picking up my fork, though I had no appetite. "The bad lady is gone, and she is never coming back." The waiter arrived with the first course, a truffle risotto that smelled of earth and riches. He placed it in front of me with a reverence usually reserved for royalty. "Compliments of the house, Mr. Jefferson," he whispered. I nodded. I took a bite. It tasted like victory. But as I looked at the empty table on the other side of the glass, where my son had sat just moments before, I knew the war wasn't over. The battle was won, but the cleanup would take a lifetime. I looked at Maya eating her risotto with a spoon, happy and safe. And I knew I would do it all again. I would burn the world down to keep her warm, and I had just struck the first match. The silence that followed Tiffany's forced exit was heavy, but it did not last long. Marcus was still standing there, his face a mask of shock that was rapidly crumbling into a grotesque display of self-pity and rage. He looked at the empty doorway, where his wife had been dragged out screaming. Then he looked at the diners who were staring at him with a mixture of pity and disgust. And finally he turned his eyes to me. I expected shame. I expected an apology. I expected him to fall to his knees and beg for forgiveness for abandoning his daughter. But Marcus had lived inside a bubble of entitlement for so long that he had lost touch with reality. He didn't see his crime. He only saw his punishment. "You did this!" he screamed, his voice cracking under the strain. He took a step toward the glass partition, his hands balling into fists at his sides. "What the hell is wrong with you, Dad? You humiliated her. You humiliated me. You just killed my reputation. Do you have any idea how hard I worked to build that image? Do you know what people will say about me now?" I sat there calmly swirling the sparkling cider in my glass. I looked at Maya, who was watching her father with wide, unblinking eyes. She wasn't scared anymore. She was seeing him clearly for the first time. She was seeing a small man in a rental suit throwing a tantrum because his toys were being taken away. Reputation. I asked, my voice low but carrying effortlessly through the quiet room. "You are worried about your reputation, Marcus. You left a 7-year-old girl in a pantry during a thunderstorm to go on a cruise, and you are worried about your image. It was a mistake, he yelled, slamming his hand against the glass partition, causing the silverware on the nearby tables to rattle. We were going to call. We were going to fix it. But you had to blow it up. You had to make a spectacle. You destroyed my life over a misunderstanding. I stood up then. I didn't rush. I unfolded my napkin and placed it on the table. I buttoned my tuxedo jacket. I walked around the table until I was standing inches from the glass face to face with my son. I didn't destroy your life, Marcus, I said. I financed it. And now the bank is closed. I reached into the inner pocket of my jacket and pulled out my phone. I unlocked it and dialed a number. I tapped the speaker icon and held the phone up so Marcus could hear, so everyone could hear. It rang once. Arthur Sterling here, the voice on the other end was crisp, dry, and efficient. The voice of a man who billed $800 an hour to dismantle people's lives. Arthur, I said, I am standing here with Marcus. He seems to be under the impression that he still owns things. He believes he has a reputation to salvage. Would you be so kind as to give him the update on his current asset portfolio? Certainly, Elijah, Arthur said. His voice boomed from the phone speaker, echoing in the dining hall. Marcus blinked, confusion warring with the anger on his face. Mr. Sterling, Dad's lawyer, what is going on? Mr. Jefferson Arthur began addressing Marcus directly. As of 5 o'clock this afternoon, Eastern Standard Time, the deed to the property located at 4502 Oakview Lane has been officially revoked. Since the property was purchased by a trust in your father's name and you were merely a tenant at will, your residency has been terminated effective immediately. Marcus's mouth fell open. Terminated. But that is my house. We have lived there for 5 years. It was never your house, son, Arthur corrected him, cold as ice. You never paid the mortgage. You never paid the taxes. You never even paid for the repairs. It was a charity housing placement, and the charity has withdrawn its support. The locks were changed an hour ago. The sheriff's department supervised the procedure to ensure the property was secured. Marcus grabbed the edge of the table, his knuckles turning white. You kicked us out. Our stuff is in there. Your personal effects are being packed by a bonded moving company as we speak. Arthur continued. They will be placed in a storage unit in industrial Atlanta. You have 30 days to pay the storage fees. If you fail to do so, the contents will be auctioned to recoup costs. This is illegal, Marcus sputtered, looking around the room for support but finding none. You can't just evict a family. We have rights. You abandoned a minor child in that property, Arthur said, his voice sharpening like a blade. Under Georgia law, that constitutes a breach of the occupancy agreement, not to mention a felony. You have no rights, Marcus, not anymore. But that was just the opening salvo. I watched as the realization began to sink in, but I wasn't done. I nodded at the phone, signaling Arthur to continue. Furthermore, Arthur said regarding the vehicle, the 2023 BMW X5 you currently drive. Marcus's eyes widened. No, not the car. The lease was co-signed by your father, Arthur explained. In fact, the payments were automatically deducted from his account as you claimed to be going through a temporary cash flow issue for the last 24 months. That authorization has been canceled. The leasing company has been notified of the default. A repossession order has been issued. Since the vehicle is currently parked at the airport long-term lot, it will be towed within the hour. My car, Marcus whispered. He looked like he was going to be sick. How am I supposed to get to work? You don't have a job, Marcus, I interjected. You lost your job 8 months ago. You have been pretending to go to work while you gambled away my money. Do not lie to me about work. Marcus recoiled as if I had slapped him. He didn't know I knew about the job. He thought that secret was safe. Arthur, finish it, I said. Regarding your financial instruments, Arthur said. The American Express Platinum, the Visa signature, and the joint checking account you share with your wife. All of these were supplementary cards issued under your father's primary credit line. Marcus was shaking his head back and forth, a slow, rhythmic denial of reality. As of 10 minutes ago, Arthur said all cards have been reported as compromised. The accounts are frozen. The credit lines are closed. You currently have 0 available credit and 0 available cash balance. Arthur paused for effect. In short, Mr. Jefferson, you are destitute. Good luck. The line went dead. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. Marcus stood there, his hands trembling by his sides, his face the color of old ash. He looked at his rental tuxedo. He looked at the half-eaten dinner on his table. He He looked at the luxury ship around him. He realized in that moment that he was standing in the middle of the ocean surrounded by opulence, and he didn't even have a dime to make a phone call. "Dad," he whispered, his voice small and broken like a child's. "You can't do this. We are on a ship. How are we supposed to pay for anything? How are we supposed to get home?" I put my phone back in my pocket. "That sounds like a problem for a man who has money, Marcus," I said. "You don't have money. You have consequences." Just then a waiter approached Marcus's table. He was holding a small black leather folder and a portable credit card machine. He looked uncomfortable but determined. "Excuse me, sir," the waiter said, stepping into the heavy silence. "I apologize for the interruption, but we received a notification from the bursar's office. The credit card on file for your stateroom, it has been declined." Marcus stared at the waiter. "Try it again," he croaked. "It must be a mistake." "We have tried it 3 times, sir," the waiter said loud enough for the nearby tables to hear. "We also tried your wife's card. Both have been flagged as inactive. We need an alternative form of payment immediately to cover the cost of the cruise, the onboard purchases, and this dinner. The total outstanding balance is $15,400. $15,000. Marcus wheezed. "Plus gratuity," the waiter added. Marcus patted his pockets frantically. He pulled out a leather wallet. He opened it. It was full of plastic cards. He pulled out a Visa. "Try this one," he said, his hand shaking so bad he dropped it on the table. The waiter picked it up and inserted it into the machine. We all watched. Maya watched. The diners watched. Even the maitre d' watched. The machine beeped. A harsh, dissonant sound. "Declined," the waiter said, showing him the screen. "Try the Amex." Marcus pleaded, pulling another card. Beep. Declined. The MasterCard. Beep. Declined. Marcus emptied his wallet onto the table. He was sweating profusely now, sweat dripping down his nose onto the white tablecloth. He looked like a desperate gambler trying to find one last chip. "None of them work." "Marcus," I said, my voice calm. "I told you." I cut the cord. Marcus looked up at me. His eyes were red, his expression wild. "You stranded us," he whispered. "You stranded us in the middle of the ocean. We have no home. We have no car. We have no money. We are homeless." I leaned in close so only he could hear me, though I knew the microphone I had planted was likely picking it up for posterity. "You are not homeless, Marcus," I said. "You are just experiencing the lifestyle you can actually afford." 0. Marcus sank into his chair, burying his face in his hands. A sob escaped him, a wretched sound of self-pity. The waiter looked at me, then back at Marcus. "Sir, if you cannot pay, I will have to call security. The ship's policy is very strict regarding unpaid balances." Marcus didn't answer. He just cried. I looked at the waiter. "Do what you have to do, son," I said. 2 security guards, the same ones who had dragged Tiffany away, appeared at the entrance of the dining room. They walked toward Marcus with purpose. Maya tugged on my sleeve. "Grandpa?" she asked softly. "Is Daddy going to jail too?" "Not jail, baby girl," I said, "but he is going to the brig. It is like a timeout for adults who make very bad choices." The guards reached the table. "Sir," one of them said, placing a hand on Marcus's shoulder, "you need to come with us." Marcus stood up slowly. He looked broken. He looked defeated. He looked at me one last time, hoping for a reprieve, hoping for his father to swoop in and write a check like I had done 1,000 times before. "Dad, please," he mouthed. I looked at him. I looked at the man who chose a vacation over his daughter. I looked at the man who let his wife abuse my granddaughter. I picked up my glass of champagne. "Bon voyage, Marcus," I said. The guards led him away. He didn't fight. He dragged his feet, walking toward the exit, his head hung low. He walked past the tables of whispering diners, past the buffet he could no longer afford, past the life he had stolen. He was a homeless man in a tuxedo, walking the plank of his own making. I turned back to Maya. The show was over. The bad actors had been removed from the stage. "Now, baby girl," I said, signaling for the waiter to bring the dessert menu. "How about that ice cream?" Maya smiled. The first real unburdened smile I had seen in days. "Yes, please, Grandpa." "With sprinkles." "You got it," I said. The financial guillotine had fallen. The blade was sharp and the cut was clean. My son was gone. But my family, the only family that mattered, was sitting right in front of me, eating chocolate ice cream and finally safe. The dining room of the Royal Caribbean ship had transformed from a sanctuary of fine dining into a theater of the absurd. Marcus was gone, led away by security like a common thief. But Tiffany remained, and she was about to deliver her encore performance. I sat with Maya, watching the woman who had once demanded I knock before entering her house now unraveling before an audience of hundreds. The realization that her credit cards were dead, that her husband was detained, and that her social media empire was burning to the ground hit her all at once. It was a psychological break, a fracture in the reality she had constructed out of filters and lies. She didn't cry. Crying implies sadness. Tiffany screamed. It was a sound that made the crystal glasses vibrate on the tables. She grabbed the tablecloth of the nearest empty table and ripped it. Silverware plates and flower vases crashed to the floor in a cacophony of destruction. "You can't do this!" she shrieked, her face twisted into a mask of pure, ugly rage. "I am a guest. I am a gold member. I want to speak to the manager. I want the police. I want my lawyer." She grabbed a half-empty wine bottle from a serving station and hurled it at the glass partition. It shattered, sending shards of glass and red wine spraying across the carpet. Diners ducked, covering their heads. The elegance of the captain's night lay in ruins around her feet. I stood up slowly, placing a hand on Maya's shoulder. "Stay here, baby girl," I said, my voice calm amidst the chaos. "Put your headphones back on. You do not need to hear this part." Maya obeyed, sliding the noise-canceling headphones over her ears, turning her attention back to her ice cream, effectively muting the monster her mother had become. I walked toward the chaos just as the heavy double doors at the front of the dining room swung open. Captain James Anderson strode in, flanked by 4 more security officers and the ship's chief of security. The captain was a man of steel and salt water, impeccable in his dress-white uniform with 4 gold stripes on his shoulder boards. I knew him by reputation. He ran a tight ship. He did not tolerate foolishness. "Everyone stop!" the captain bellowed, his voice commanding instant silence. Tiffany froze, panting heavily, her chest heaving. She looked at the captain, wild-eyed, pointing a shaking finger at me. "Him," she screamed. "Arrest him. He stole my life. He turned off my money. He is abusing us." Captain Anderson looked at the broken glass. He looked at the overturned table. Then he looked at Tiffany. "Madam, you are destroying ship property and disturbing the peace. That is enough. He wants to kidnap my daughter," Tiffany yelled, lunging toward the glass partition where Maya sat. "He kidnapped her." Captain Anderson turned to me. His eyes narrowed slightly, assessing the situation. "Mr. Jefferson," he said, "I was informed there was a situation regarding payment. I did not expect a riot." "Captain," I said, stepping forward, my hands clasped behind my back, "I apologize for the disturbance my family has caused. However, this is not merely a dispute over a declined credit card." I reached into my jacket and pulled out a manila envelope I had prepared with Arthur Sterling's help. "I am formally reporting a crime," I stated, my voice projecting clearly. 2 crimes, actually. The first is financial fraud involving the unauthorized use of my credit lines, which has already been flagged by American Express and Visa. The second and far more serious crime is child abandonment. I handed the envelope to the captain. Inside you will find a notarized affidavit from the neighbors in Atlanta, time-stamped security footage of these 2 individuals leaving a 7-year-old child alone in a locked house for 48 hours, and a copy of the police report filed this morning in Georgia. The captain opened the envelope. He scanned the documents, his expression hardening with every line he read. He looked at the photo of Maya sleeping in the pantry. He looked at the timestamp. "This child," he asked, looking over at Maya, who was happily eating her dessert, oblivious to the storm. "My granddaughter," I confirmed. "They left her to die so they could come on your ship. I brought her here to ensure her safety and to confront them." Tiffany laughed, a manic, hysterical sound. "He is lying. He is senile. Maya was sick. We left her with a nanny." The captain looked at Tiffany. He closed the folder. "Madam, under maritime law specifically, the Cruise Vessel Security and Safety Act and the laws of the flag state of this vessel, the master of the ship has the authority to detain any person who poses a threat to the safety of the vessel or who has committed a serious crime on board or ashore." "What are you talking about?" Tiffany spat. "You can't detain me. I am an American citizen. We are in the middle of the ocean." "Exactly," the captain said, cold as the Atlantic. "We are in international waters. Out here, I am the law, and I do not look kindly on people who abandon children." He signaled to his security team. "Take her to the brig." "The brig," Tiffany gasped. "Like Jail. It is a secure holding facility on Deck 0, the captain corrected. You will remain there until we dock in Miami, where the Federal Bureau of Investigation and Child Protective Services will be waiting to have a conversation with you. No, Tiffany screamed, backing away until she hit a waiter's station. You can't. I have rights. I have followers. I will live stream this. I will destroy this cruise line. Madam, your phone is at the bottom of the ocean, the captain noted dryly. And your rights currently consist of the right to remain silent, which I suggest you exercise immediately. The security guards moved in. They didn't treat her like a lady in an evening gown. They treated her like a combatant. They secured her arms. She kicked and bit, trying to sink her teeth into a guard's arm, but they were professionals. They marched her toward the exit, her heels dragging on the carpet, her screams echoing off the vaulted ceiling. "Where is Marcus?" she wailed as they dragged her past me. "Marcus, help me." "Your husband is already being processed," the chief of security muttered. "You will be neighbors." I watched her go. I watched the woman who had sneered at my furniture and mocked my life being hauled away like garbage. I felt nothing but a cold, grim satisfaction. Then I heard a small voice. "Mommy." It was Leo. I had almost forgotten about him. He was standing near the entrance to the kitchen where the staff had been trying to keep him occupied. He had seen everything. He had seen his father taken. He had seen his mother dragging her feet fighting the guards. He looked terrified. He was holding a half-eaten cookie, his eyes wide with the trauma of seeing his world collapse. He ran toward me. Not because he loved me, but because I was the only thing left standing. "Grandpa," he cried, grabbing my leg. Bing. "Where are they taking Mommy? I want to go home. I don't like this boat anymore." I looked down at the boy. He was spoiled, yes. He was mean to Maya, yes. But he was 8 years old. He was a victim of his parents just as much as Maya was. He had been taught to be cruel. I put a hand on his head. "They are going to a timeout, Leo," I said. "A very long timeout." "Captain," I said, looking up, "the boy cannot go to the brig. He is innocent in this." The captain nodded. "Agreed. We have a secure youth center with licensed child care professionals. He will be housed in a staff cabin under 24-hour supervision. He will be fed, he will be safe, and he will be kept away from the situation below decks." I knelt down to Leo's level. "Leo, listen to me. You are going to go with this lady. She is going to give you pizza and let you play video games. You are going to stay there until we get back to Florida." "But I want to stay with you," Leo whined, looking at Maya, who was still at the table. "Why does she get to stay with you?" "Because, Leo," I said softly but firmly, "she knows how to behave. And right now, you need to learn how to be alone without your parents. It is a lesson they should have taught you a long time ago." I signaled to the youth staff member who had accompanied the security team. She stepped forward, offering a hand to Leo. "Come on, sweetie," she said. "We have ice cream, too." Leo looked at me, then at the nice lady, then back at the empty doorway where his parents had vanished. He realized he had no choice. He took her hand, his shoulders slumping in defeat. I watched him walk away. It was a mercy. He would be safe, but he would be separated from the toxicity of his parents for the first time in his life. Maybe there was hope for him yet. The dining room was quiet now. The show was over. The waiters were already sweeping up the broken glass and replacing the tablecloths. The orchestra in the corner struck up a hesitant waltz, trying to restore normalcy. Captain Anderson turned to me. He extended a hand. "Mr. Jefferson, I apologize for the disruption to your evening. The bill for the damages will be added to your son's outstanding balance." I shook his hand. "Thank you, Captain. I assume there will be a hearing when we dock." "Yes. The authorities have already been notified. We sent the digital evidence you provided ahead to the Miami field office. They will meet the ship." "Good," I said. The captain tipped his hat and walked away, followed by his entourage. I stood there for a moment, alone in the center of the room. I straightened my tie. I brushed a piece of lint from my lapel. I walked back to the table. Maya had taken her headphones off. She looked up at me. "Is the bad lady in the dungeon?" she asked. "Something like that baby girl," I said. "She is in a room with no windows, just like the pantry." Maya nodded, solemn and satisfied. "Good. She should think about what she did." I offered her my arm. "Come on, Maya," I said. "I think we have had enough excitement for one dinner. Let's go back to our suite. I believe there is a movie on the TV and room service makes excellent popcorn." We walked out of the dining room. We didn't leave through the side door, we walked right up the grand staircase that centered the atrium. I paused at the top of the stairs and looked down. Below me, the ship was a hive of activity people drinking, gambling, and dancing, oblivious to the tragedy and justice that had just played out. But deep below the waterline in the steel belly of the ship, Marcus and Tiffany were sitting in a cold metal cell, listening to the hum of the engines, realizing that their vacation was over and their life sentence had just begun. I looked at them in my mind's eye, and I felt no pity. I squeezed Maya's hand. "Let's go upstairs," I said. "The view is better from the top." The remaining 48 hours of the voyage were a study in duality. It was a tale of two ships existing simultaneously within the same steel hull. Up on deck 17 in the rarefied air of the owner's sweet life was a technicolor dream of healing and joy. Down on deck 0 below the waterline in the brig life was a gray, humid nightmare of recrimination and stale bread. I made sure Maya experienced everything she had been denied. We didn't just go to the pool, we conquered it. I sat in a cabana wearing my linen shirt and watching over her like a sentinel while she splashed in the water with other children. For the first few hours, she kept looking over her shoulder, expecting Tiffany to appear and scold her for ruining her hair, or Marcus to tell her she was being too loud. But they never came. Slowly, the tension left her small shoulders. She learned that she could scream with laughter, and the only thing that would happen was that I would smile and wave back. We went to the Aqua Theater show where divers leaped from high wires into a pool that seemed impossibly small. Maya sat on the edge of her seat, her mouth open in wonder, clutching my hand, not out of fear, but out of pure excitement. We ate cotton candy that dissolved on our tongues like sweet clouds. We played mini golf on the upper deck where the wind whipped Maya's hair around her face, and she laughed so hard she got the hiccups. It was the vacation she was supposed to have. It was the childhood she was supposed to have. But while we were living in the sun, I knew exactly what was happening in the dark. The chief of security gave me daily updates delivered with a stoic professionalism that masked his obvious disdain for his prisoners. Stateroom 001 was not a suite. It was a holding cell designed for drunkards and fighters, not for a couple accustomed to high-thread count sheets. It was a steel box with a bunk bolted to the floor, a stainless steel toilet in the corner, and no windows. The ventilation system hummed with a constant mechanical drone, and the vibration of the ship's massive engines rattled the teeth. Marcus and Tiffany were not handling it well. According to the reports, the veneer of their marriage had disintegrated completely within the first 6 hours. Confined to a space smaller than their walk-in closet at home, they had turned on each other with the ferocity of trapped rats. Tiffany blamed Marcus for everything. She screamed that he was a failure of a man, that he had lied about his finances, that he had dragged her into this humiliation. She screamed about her ruined dress, her ruined reputation, and the smell of the room. She demanded organic food and bottled water. She got tap water and dry rolls. Marcus, for his part, had stopped trying to appease her. The reality of his situation had finally pierced his fog of entitlement. He yelled back. He told her she was a vampire who had sucked him dry. He told her he hated her social media-obsessed life. He told her that leaving Maya was her idea. They fought until they were hoarse. Then they sat in silence on opposite ends of the bunk, staring at the metal walls, listening to the ocean churn against the hull inches from their heads. To make matters worse, the sea had turned choppy as we crossed the Gulf Stream. Up in the suite, the stabilizers kept us relatively steady. But down in the bow where the brig was located, the motion was violent. They were seasick. Violently, relentlessly seasick. I imagined Tiffany, the woman who would not drink tap water, retching into a steel toilet, while Marcus lay groaning on the floor. It was a harsh image. Some might call it cruel. But I remembered the feverish child in the pantry shivering in the dark while they packed Louis Vuitton bags. And my sympathy evaporated like mist in the sun. On the final evening, I sat with Maya on our balcony. The sun was setting, painting the horizon in bruised purples and fiery oranges. We had just finished a room-service dinner of cheeseburgers and fries, Maya's request. She was wearing her pajamas, her hair braided, and she looked peaceful. "Grandpa," she said, looking out at the water. "Yes, Maya. Do you hate them?" The question caught me off guard. I looked at her expecting to see fear, but I saw only curiosity. She was trying to understand the world and her place in it. She was trying to reconcile the grandfather who bought her ice cream with the man who had sent her parents to a cage. I took a sip of my iced tea. I thought about my answer carefully. I wanted to be honest, but I did not want to poison her heart with hate. "No, baby girl," I said softly. "I do not hate them. Hate is a fire that burns the person holding it. I am not burning." "Then why are they in the timeout room?" she asked. I turned my chair so I was facing her. "Maya, do you remember when I taught you about the garden at the farm? Do you remember what happens if we let the weeds grow?" She nodded. "They choke the flowers, Grandpa. They take all the water and the sun." "Exactly. Marcus and Tiffany. They let weeds grow in their hearts. They let selfishness and greed grow so big that it choked out the love. They forgot how to be parents. They forgot how to be good people." I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees. "I put them in that room not because I hate them, but because they need to learn. They have spent their whole lives running away from the weeds. They paid other people to pull them, or they pretended they weren't there. But you cannot run forever, Maya. Eventually, you have to get down in the dirt and pull them out." Maya thought about this. "Is the room helping them pull the weeds?" she asked. "I don't know," I admitted. "Some weeds have very deep roots, but at least they cannot hurt the flowers while they are in there. And you, Maya, you are my most precious flower. My job is to make sure you have the sun." She smiled a small, sad but understanding smile. "I like the sun," she said. "So do I, baby girl. So do I." I tucked her into the big bed one last time. She fell asleep instantly exhausted by the joy of the day. I stayed up. I packed our bags. I folded the beautiful dresses and the new toys. I placed the spy microphone in the trash can. Its job was done. I went out to the balcony one last time. In the distance, I could see the glow of the city lights reflecting off the clouds. Miami. The vacation was over. The fantasy was ending. Down below, I knew Marcus and Tiffany were likely awake, staring into the darkness of their cell, terrified of what the morning would bring. They knew the ship was slowing down. They knew the engine pitch was changing. They knew that when the door opened, it wouldn't be a waiter with a tray. It would be the consequences they had outrun for so long finally catching up. The next morning, the ship docked at the port of Miami. The sun was bright and harsh. The illusion of the cruise was stripped away, replaced by the industrial reality of cranes, cargo containers, and law enforcement. We didn't have to wait in line to disembark. The concierge escorted us off the ship before the general call. We walked down the gangway into the humidity of Florida. Waiting at the bottom of the ramp were 4 police cruisers, their lights flashing silently in the morning air. Standing next to them were federal agents in windbreakers and a woman from Child Protective Services holding a clipboard. I saw Arthur Sterling standing by a black SUV talking to a detective. He saw me and nodded a grim acknowledgement of the work to come. I held Maya's hand tight. "Stay close," I said. We stood by the SUV and waited. 10 minutes later, a side door of the ship opened. It wasn't the guest exit, it was the crew gangway. 2 officers walked out leading Marcus. He was handcuffed. He was wearing the same clothes he had been arrested in, his rental tuxedo pants stained and wrinkled, his shirt unbuttoned and gray with grime. He looked 10 years older. He was unshaven, pale and shaking. He blinked in the sunlight like a mole dragged from its burrow. Behind him came Tiffany. She was also cuffed. Her hair was a matted mess, her expensive makeup smeared into a raccoon mask of despair. She was weeping softly, a broken sound that had lost all its theatricality. They walked them down the ramp. Leo was brought out separately by the youth staff holding the hand of a social worker. He looked scared, but he was clean and fed. He saw me and waved tentatively. I waved back. Marcus looked up. He saw the police cars. He saw the agents. And then he saw me standing by the luxury SUV holding Maya's hand. He stopped. The officer behind him nudged him forward, but Marcus dug his heels in. "Dad," he croaked, his voice a ruin of what it used to be. "Dad, help us. Please." It was just a mistake. I looked at him. I looked at the man who had been my son. And I felt nothing. The anger was gone. The sadness was gone. There was only a cold clarity. "It wasn't a mistake, Marcus," I said, my voice carrying over the distance. "It was a choice. And this is the receipt." The officers pushed him forward. They guided him into the back of a squad car. He slumped against the seat, looking out the window at me, his eyes begging for a salvation that wasn't coming. Tiffany didn't even look at me. She stared at the ground, broken and defeated. They put her in a separate car. The doors slammed shut. The sound was final. Arthur walked over. "The paperwork is filed, Elijah," he said. "The temporary custody order for Maya is signed by the judge in Georgia. We have jurisdiction. Leo will be placed with Tiffany's mother as per the statute, but we will petition for visitation." "Good," I said. I looked down at Maya. She watched the police cars drive away, their lights fading into the traffic of the port. "Are they gone, Grandpa?" she asked. "Yes, Maya, they are gone." She took a deep breath, filling her lungs with the humid air. She squeezed my hand. "Okay," she said. "Can we go home now? To the farm?" I opened the door of the SUV. "Yes, baby girl," I said. "We are going home." We drove away, leaving the port behind. I didn't look in the rearview mirror. I looked forward at the road ahead, at the open highway, and at the little girl sitting next to me who finally knew what it meant to be loved without conditions. The lesson was taught, the debt was paid, and for the first time in a long time the foundation was solid. The ship shuddered as the side thrusters fought the current, pushing the massive vessel against the concrete pier of the port of Miami. The vibration traveled up through the soles of my shoes, a deep mechanical groan that signaled the end of the fantasy. From the balcony of the owner's suite, I watched the ropes being thrown, the heavy lines securing the ship to the mainland. Down below on the dock, a line of black SUVs and marked police cruisers sat idling their red and blue lights reflecting off the white hull of the ship. They were not there for a dignitary. They were there for my son. I turned from the railing and looked at Maya. She was sitting on the sofa, her small backpack on her shoulders, holding the hand of Arthur Sterling, who had flown in early that morning to meet us. Arthur looked out of place in the tropical humidity, his charcoal suit immaculate, his briefcase resting by his feet like a weapon. "It is time, Elijah," Arthur said, checking his watch. "The gangway is secured. The Miami-Dade police and the federal agents are boarding now. We have clearance to disembark via the crew exit to avoid the paparazzi swarm at the main terminal." I nodded. I walked over to Maya and knelt down. "Listen to me, baby girl," I said, smoothing her hair. "We are going to walk off this ship now. There are going to be some loud people outside and you might see your parents, but you do not have to say anything to them. You do not have to look at them. You just hold my hand and keep walking. Can you do that?" Maya nodded, solemn and brave. She didn't ask if they were coming home. She knew the answer. We had talked about consequences. She knew that sometimes when people break big rules, they have to go away for a while to learn how to follow them. I picked her up, lifting her into my arms. She was getting too big to carry, but today I needed her close. I needed her to feel the beat of my heart so she would know it was steady. I needed her to know that no matter how chaotic the world got around us, I was the rock that would not move. We took the service elevator down to deck 1. The air grew heavier, humid, and smelling of diesel and salt water. The crew gangway was a narrow metal ramp usually reserved for loading supplies and offloading trash. Today, it was serving both purposes. At the bottom of the ramp, the heat hit us like a physical weight. The humidity in Florida is different from Georgia. It is thick and clinging. Waiting on the concrete were 4 uniformed officers from the Miami-Dade Police Department, 2 agents in windbreakers with FBI stenciled on the backs, and a woman in a gray pantsuit holding a clipboard who I recognized as the liaison from Child Protective Services. Arthur stepped forward first, shaking hands with the lead detective, a man named Rodriguez. They spoke in low tones, exchanging documents. I saw Rodriguez nod and look toward the ship. "Here they come," someone said. The heavy steel door of the ship clanged open. 2 ship security officers stepped out first. Between them, stumbling in the sudden glare of the sun, was Marcus. My son looked like a man who had been hollowed out. The last 48 hours in the brig had stripped away every layer of his pretense. His rental tuxedo pants were stained and wrinkled, the hem dragging on the ground. His shirt was unbuttoned, revealing a chest slick with sweat. He hadn't shaved and his eyes were sunken, rimmed with red. He blinked rapidly, squinting against the light, looking around with the desperate confusion of an animal released from a trap, only to find itself in a slaughterhouse. Behind him came Tiffany. If Marcus looked broken, Tiffany looked feral. Her hair, once her pride and joy, was a matted bird's nest. Her makeup had smeared into black streaks down her cheeks, giving her the appearance of a demented raccoon. She was still wearing the cheap silver dress from the dinner, but the sequins were torn and a strap was broken, held together with a safety pin. She wasn't walking, she was being dragged. She dug her heels into the gangway, fighting the female security officer who held her arm. "Get your hands off me!" she spat, her voice hoarse from screaming. "This is a violation of my civil rights. I am an American citizen. I want my phone. Give me my phone." They reached the bottom of the ramp. Detective Rodriguez stepped forward, his hand resting on the handcuffs at his belt. "Marcus Jefferson Tiffany. Jefferson," he said, his voice cutting through Tiffany's rant. "You are under arrest for child abandonment in the first degree of felony in the state of Georgia. We also have a federal warrant regarding wire fraud and conspiracy." Marcus let out a sound that was half sob, half wheeze. He held his hands out, his wrists crossing automatically as if he had been practicing for this moment in his nightmares. The handcuffs clicked shut. The sound was final, metallic, and cold. Tiffany, however, did not go quietly. When the officer reached for her, she shrieked and pulled away. "No," she screamed. "You can't arrest me. I didn't do anything. It was his idea." She pointed a shaking finger at Marcus. "He locked the door. He changed the code. I wanted to go back. I told him we should go back." Marcus looked at her, his eyes dull and dead. "You are lying, Tiff," he croaked. "You said we needed the content. You said Maya was bad for the brand. I never said that. You liar," Tiffany yelled, lunging at him, only to be restrained by two officers who forced her hands behind her back. The cuffs snapped into place. It was then that she saw the cameras. I had not just called the police. I had called the press. I had tipped off 3 local news stations and a national affiliate. I told them that the momfluencer who abandoned her child was being brought in. They were waiting behind the police barricade, their lenses zooming in, capturing every second of her downfall in high definition. Tiffany's eyes widened. For a split second, I saw her instinct kick in the reflex to pose, to smile, to filter the reality. She straightened her spine. She tried to toss her matted hair, but then she saw me. I was standing 10 feet away holding Maya. I was wearing my suit pristine and untouched by the heat. I was looking at her with the dispassionate gaze of a judge who has already signed the sentence. The facade cracked. The influencer vanished and the narcissist exploded. She threw herself toward the cameras, dragging the officers with her, screaming at the top of her lungs. "It is him," she shrieked, her face contorted into a mask of pure hate. "It is his fault. My father-in-law, Elijah Jefferson. He set us up." The reporters shouted questions, their microphones thrust forward like spears. "Ms. Jefferson, did you leave your daughter alone? Is it true you went on a cruise while she was locked in a pantry?" "He is the devil," Tiffany screamed, ignoring the questions, desperate to control the narrative one last time. "He is rich. He has millions he never told us about. He paid people to lie. He hacked our security system. He trapped us on that boat. He is a monster. He hates me because I am white. He hates me because I am beautiful. He planned this whole thing to steal my daughter." She looked directly into the camera lens, her eyes wild. "He is the devil. Do you hear me? That old man is the devil." The press turned their cameras toward me. They saw a 75-year-old black man holding a little girl. They saw the quiet dignity in my posture. They saw the way Maya clung to my neck, burying her face to hide from the woman screaming her name. "Mr. Jefferson," a reporter called out, "do you have a response to her allegations? She says you orchestrated this. She says you are evil. I could have walked away. I could have let her ranting speak for itself. But I knew how the world worked. Silence is often mistaken for guilt. And I wanted to make sure that when Maya grew up and Googled this day, she would see her grandfather speaking the truth." I handed Maya to Arthur, who took her gently and stepped back, shielding her with his body. I adjusted my cuffs. I stepped forward into the circle of microphones. I did not raise my voice. I did not scream. I spoke with the gravelly resonance of a man who has spent a lifetime commanding respect. I looked straight at Tiffany, who was panting in the grip of the officers. Then I looked at the cameras. "A devil," I asked, calmly letting the word hang in the humid air. I pointed a finger at the ship, the massive white monument to excess that loomed behind us. "A devil is not someone who exposes the truth. A devil is a person who looks at a 7-year-old child, a child who has already lost her first family, and decides that a vacation is more important than her life." I paused, letting the cameras zoom in on my face. "A devil is someone who locks a little girl in a dark house during a thunderstorm with nothing but a box of crackers so they can go drink wine and take pictures of themselves. A devil is someone who uses a child as a prop for internet fame and then discards her like trash when the camera is off." I turned back to Tiffany. Her mouth was open, but she had no words left. The truth was, a physical weight pressing her down. If protecting my granddaughter from monsters makes me a devil, then I will gladly burn in hell, I said. But I will burn knowing she is safe. And you, Tiffany, you will just burn. I turned my back on her. Get them out of here, detective, I said over my shoulder. The officers shoved Marcus and Tiffany into the back of separate squad cars. As the doors slammed, shutting off Tiffany's renewed screaming, the silence that fell over the dock was heavy and final. I walked back to Arthur and took Maya into my arms. She looked at me, her eyes wide. Is she gone, Grandpa? She asked. She is gone, baby girl, I said. The police cars peeled away, sirens wailing, fading into the distance, taking the toxicity out of our lives. Arthur handed me the keys to the rental SUV he had arranged. The hearing is set for next Tuesday in Atlanta, he said. I have already filed for emergency permanent custody. With this footage and the arrest records, it will be a formality. Thank you, Arthur, I said. I opened the back door of the SUV and buckled Maya into her booster seat. She looked tired but relieved. The tension that had held her small body rigid for days was finally dissolving. Grandpa, she said as I got into the driver's seat. Yes, Maya, you called yourself a devil. I looked at her in the rearview mirror. I smiled a tired, gentle smile. Only to the bad guys, Maya. To you, I am just Grandpa. She smiled back. Can we go home now? She asked. To the farm. I miss the chickens. I started the engine. The air conditioning kicked in, cooling the sweat on my brow. Yes, Maya, I said, putting the car in gear. We are going home, and we are never looking back. The courtroom in downtown Atlanta smelled of floor wax and old wood, but beneath that clean scent lingered the heavy, suffocating odor of desperation. It had been 30 days since the ship docked in Miami. 30 days since I watched my son and his wife hauled away in handcuffs. They were out on bail now, the money posted by Tiffany's mother, who had mortgaged her own condo to pay the bond. I sat at the plaintiff's table, my hands resting on the polished oak. I wore the same charcoal suit I had worn on the ship, my armor against the chaos. Arthur Sterling sat beside me, a shark smelling blood in the water. We were calm. We were prepared. Across the aisle, Marcus and Tiffany sat with their court-appointed defense attorneys. They looked different. The transformation was calculated, designed to elicit sympathy from the family court judge. Tiffany was wearing a modest beige cardigan and a long skirt, her hair pulled back in a severe bun, no makeup covering her pale face. She looked like a penitent nun, not the woman who had screamed about her brand while being dragged off a cruise ship. Marcus wore a cheap off-the-rack suit that didn't fit, looking small and defeated, his eyes fixed on the table. They were fighting for custody. Not because they loved Maya, I knew that. Arthur knew that. Even the judge probably suspected that. They were fighting because Tiffany needed a redemption arc. She needed to be the mother who made a terrible mistake and fought to get her family back. Without Maya, she was just a child abuser. With Maya, she could be a victim of circumstance. The hearing began. Tiffany took the stand first. Her performance was Oscar-worthy. She cried on cue. She dabbed her eyes with a tissue. She spoke in a soft, trembling voice that forced the stenographer to lean forward. Your Honor, she whispered, looking at Judge Reynolds, a stern woman with gray hair and zero tolerance for nonsense. I know what I did looks bad. I know leaving Maya was a lapse in judgment. But I was under so much pressure. The internet. It demands perfection. I got lost in it. But I love my daughter. She is my world. Please don't take her away from me. I made a mistake, but I am a good mother. Her lawyer, a young public defender who looked exhausted, tried to paint a picture of a stressed-out mom who made one bad decision. One bad decision, I thought. Locking a 7-year-old in a pantry for 2 days is not a decision. It is a sentence. Then it was Arthur's turn. He didn't ask her about the cruise. He didn't ask her about the pantry. He stood up, buttoned his jacket, and walked toward the witness stand, holding a single tablet computer. Mrs. Jefferson Arthur said, his voice pleasant, almost conversational. You say you love Maya? You say she is your world? Yes, Tiffany sobbed. I adopted her. I chose her. You chose her, Arthur repeated. That is an interesting choice of words. Tell me, Mrs. Jefferson, are you familiar with the concept of cloud storage? Tiffany blinked, confused by the pivot. Cloud storage, like for photos and documents, Arthur added. Notes, diaries, specifically the digital journal app you have installed on your iPhone, the one linked to your iCloud account. Tiffany's face went rigid. The tears stopped instantly. I write my thoughts down. It is therapy. Therapy. Arthur nodded. Well, we subpoenaed your cloud data as part of the discovery for the fraud investigation, and we found some very interesting therapeutic thoughts. He tapped the screen of the tablet. Your Honor, I would like to enter into Evidence Exhibit G. These are entries from Mrs. Jefferson's personal digital diary dated 3 months ago, 6 months ago, and 2 weeks before the cruise. Objection. Tiffany's lawyer stood up. Private thoughts are not admissibility. Overruled, Judge Reynolds said, leaning forward, her eyes sharp behind her glasses. This is a custody hearing, counselor. The state of mind of the parent is relevant. Proceed, Mr. Sterling. Arthur looked at Tiffany. He didn't look triumphantly. He looked at her with a profound disappointment. Entry dated March 12th. Arthur read aloud. The engagement numbers are down. The adoption content is stale. Maya is getting too old to be cute, and she is too awkward for the brand deals. I need to pivot. Maybe a tragic backstory, or maybe we rehome her. A gasp went through the courtroom. Not from the gallery, but from the judge herself. Rehome her? Arthur looked up. Like a dog. Mrs. Jefferson, you wrote about your daughter like she was a dog that stopped doing tricks. I was venting. Tiffany stammered, her face flushing red. I was just frustrated. Let's continue, Arthur said, ignoring her. Entry dated May 4th. Marcus is worried about the money. I told him we just need to hold on until the old man kicks the bucket. Once we get the inheritance, we can dump the kid, put her back in the system. She served her purpose. The ROI on her is negative now. ROI. Arthur paused, letting the acronym hang in the air. Return on investment. You referred to your child as a negative investment. That is not what I meant. Tiffany shrieked, her mask of modesty slipping. You are taking it out of context. And finally, Arthur said, his voice dropping an octave, deadly serious. Entry dated 2 weeks ago, just before you booked the cruise. He looked directly at Tiffany. If we leave her behind, maybe something happens. Accidents happen. If she disappears, the sympathy followers would be huge. We could monetize the grief. It would save us a fortune in school fees. The courtroom was silent. Absolute dead silence. It was the silence of people realizing they were in the presence of something truly evil. Tiffany wasn't crying anymore. She was staring at Arthur with the eyes of a trapped animal. That was a dark thought, she whispered. Everyone has dark thoughts. I didn't mean it. I didn't do it. You left her in a locked house with no food, Arthur said. You created the accident, Mrs. Jefferson. You set the stage. You were just waiting for the curtain to fall. Arthur turned to the judge. Your Honor, this woman did not make a mistake. She made a business plan. She acquired a child for profit, and when that profit dried up, she planned an exit strategy that involved the child's erasure. She is not a mother. She is a predator. Tiffany looked at the judge. She looked at her lawyer, who had put his head in his hands. She looked at Marcus. Marcus was staring at her. He looked horrified. He hadn't known. I could see it in his face. He knew she was greedy. He knew she was vain, but he didn't know she had written it down. He didn't know she had planned to discard Maya like a used prop. You wrote that, Marcus whispered, his voice echoing in the quiet room. You wrote that you wanted her to disappear. Tiffany turned on him, snapping like a viper. Shut up, Marcus. I did it for us. I did it for the money. You wanted the money too. I didn't want her dead, Marcus yelled, standing up and knocking his chair over. I wanted a vacation. I didn't want to kill her. Sit down, Mr. Jefferson. Judge Reynolds barked, pounding her gavel. Marcus collapsed back into his chair, sobbing into his hands. It was the sound of a man realizing he had sold his soul to the devil and got a bounced check in return. Judge Reynolds looked at them. She looked at the tablet Arthur had placed on her bench. She took off her glasses and rubbed the bridge of her nose. I have heard enough, she said quietly. She put her glasses back on. Her eyes were hard as flint. In my 20 years on the bench, I have seen negligence. I have seen addiction. I have seen cruelty. But I have never seen such a calculated commodification of a human life. She looked at Tiffany. Mrs. Jefferson, you are devoid of maternal instinct. You are a danger to any child in your care. She looked at Marcus. And you, Mr. Jefferson. You stood by. You enabled. You funded. You are just as guilty because you let it happen. You chose your wife over your child. The judge picked up her pen. The court hereby terminates the parental rights of Marcus and Tiffany Jefferson effective immediately. This termination applies to the adopted child Maya Jefferson and the biological child Leo Jefferson. No, Tiffany screamed, standing up. You can't take Leo. He is mine. He is my blood. You forfeit your blood rights when you prove yourself capable of such monstrosity, the judge said, her voice rising. Leo will be placed in the permanent custody of his maternal grandmother, who has petitioned the court and has been vetted by CPS. And regarding Maya Jefferson, the judge continued, turning her eyes to me. I grant full permanent legal guardianship to Mr. Elijah Jefferson. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. My shoulders slumped. It was over. She was safe. She was mine. Tiffany was screaming again, but it was a distant sound. The bailiffs were moving in. They were escorting her out, not to jail this time, but out of the courtroom, out of Maya's life. Marcus didn't move. He sat there while his wife was dragged away. He sat there while the judge closed the file. When the court was adjourned, I stood up. Arthur shook my hand. We did it, Elijah. I nodded. Yes, Arthur, we did. I turned to leave. I had to go pick up Maya from the waiting room. I had to tell her that she never had to worry about being returned or rehomed or erased ever again. Dad. I stopped. I didn't turn around. Dad, please. I turned slowly. Marcus was standing by the defense table. He looked like a ghost. He looked like the little boy I used to take fishing. The little boy who used to cry when he scraped his knee. But that boy was gone, consumed by the weak man standing in front of me. I didn't know Dad. He wept, tears streaming down his face. I didn't know she wrote those things. I didn't know she wanted her gone. You knew enough, Marcus, I said, my voice tired but steady. You knew you locked the door. You knew you left her. You don't get to claim ignorance just because you didn't write the plan down. You executed it. He took a step toward me, his hands reaching out. I lost everything, Dad. My house, my car, my wife, my kids. I have nothing. I am sleeping on a cot in a shelter. I am scrubbing toilets at a diner. Help me, please. Just give me a chance. I looked at him. I looked at the hands reaching for me, hands that had taken and taken and taken. I reached into my pocket. I pulled out a single crisp $1 bill. I walked over to him. I placed the bill in his hand. Here is your inheritance, Marcus, I said. Don't spend it all in one place. I turned and walked away. Dad, he screamed behind me, a raw sound of total despair. Dad, don't leave me. I kept walking. I pushed open the heavy wooden doors of the courtroom. I wasn't leaving him. He had left us a long time ago. I walked into the hallway. Maya was sitting on a bench swinging her legs. She saw me and jumped up. Grandpa, she chirped, running to me. Is it done? I picked her up, hugging her tight, breathing in the scent of her shampoo and the promise of her future. It is done, baby girl, I said. Let's go home. We walked out of the courthouse into the bright Atlanta sun, leaving the shadows behind us forever. The Georgia sun felt different on the porch of the new farmhouse. It wasn't the oppressive heat of the city or the humid weight of the Miami docks. It was a gentle, warming light that filtered through the leaves of the ancient oak trees lining the driveway. I sat in my rocking chair, a glass of iced tea sweating on the small table beside me, watching the dust motes dance in the afternoon air. It had been exactly 1 year since I walked out of that courtroom. 1 year since I severed the branch of my family tree that had become rotten so the rest could survive. I didn't live in the old house anymore. I sold it 2 months after the trial. Too many ghosts, too many memories of a son I thought I knew and a wife who would have been heartbroken to see what he became. I bought this place, a 60-acre horse ranch 2 hours north of Atlanta. It was quiet. It was green. And most importantly, it was ours. Look, Grandpa. Look at me. I looked up. In the paddock about 50 yards away, Maya was trotting on a gentle mare named Buttercup. She was wearing a helmet and riding boots, her back straight, her hands confident on the reins. She didn't look like the terrified child shivering in a pantry anymore. She looked like she belonged to the earth and the sky. Good job, baby girl, I called out. Keep your heels down. She laughed, a sound that was pure and unburdened. I took a sip of tea. The silence here was a luxury I had earned. But in the quiet, I often thought about the noise I had left behind. Arthur Sterling still gave me monthly updates. He called it the debris report. Marcus was currently living in a boarding house in downtown Atlanta, a place where you paid by the week and shared a bathroom with strangers. He was working at a car wash scrubbing mud off the tires of SUVs that he used to lease. Arthur told me he had seen him once. Marcus looked older, thinner. He kept his head down. He didn't tell people his last name was Jefferson anymore. He had tried to write to me once. A letter arrived 3 months ago. No return address. Just a single sheet of notebook paper. Dad, it said, "I am sorry. I know that doesn't fix it, but I am learning what $1 is worth. I miss you." I didn't reply. I folded it and put it in the safe. Not because I didn't care, but because silence was the only teacher he would listen to. He needed to find his own way out of the hole he dug. If he ever climbed out, maybe we could talk. But not until then. Tiffany's fate was less quiet, but equally devastating. The internet never forgets. The video of her screaming at the port, the recordings of her cruelty, they followed her like a digital shadow. She couldn't get a job in marketing. She couldn't get a job in sales. She was toxic. Last I heard, she was working the checkout line at a discount grocery store in Alabama wearing a name tag that said Brenda, trying to hide from the world she used to desperate to impress. She had filed for bankruptcy twice. Her friends, the ones she tried so hard to impress, had vanished the moment the credit card stopped working. She was alone with her vanity and a mirror that no longer showed her what she wanted to see. And Leo. My biological grandson was in a behavioral boarding school in Vermont. It was expensive, and I paid every cent. It wasn't a punishment. It was a detox. He needed to be deprogrammed. He needed to unlearn the entitlement and the cruelty his parents had fed him like candy. He wrote to Maya sometimes. At first, the letters were angry, blaming her for everything. But lately, they had changed. "Dear Maya," he wrote in his last letter, "we went hiking yesterday. I saw a deer. I didn't scare it away. I wish you could see it. I am sorry I yelled at you on the boat." Maya kept the letters in a special box. She was forgiving in a way I could never be. She was the best of us. I watched her guide the horse back to the stable. She dismounted with a grace that made my chest swell. She groomed the horse, talking to it in a low, soothing voice. She had a gift with animals. They trusted her because she knew what it felt like to be vulnerable. She ran up the porch steps, her boots clumping on the wood. She was flushed and sweaty, smelling of hay and sunshine. "Did you see me, Grandpa?" she asked, breathless. "I did a trot." "I saw you, baby girl," I said, handing her a glass of lemonade. "You were flying." She sat on the step next to my chair, leaning her head against my knee. "I like it here," she said. "It is quiet." "It is," I agreed. "Grandpa." "Yes, Maya. Do you miss them?" I looked out at the rolling hills. The sun was beginning to dip, casting long shadows across the grass. "I miss who I wanted them to be," I said honestly, "but I do not miss who they were." Maya nodded. She understood. She was 8 now, going on 30. "I don't miss them either," she said softly. "I used to be scared that they would come back, that they would take me away. But now what? Now I know they can't, because you are the giant." I chuckled, reaching down to stroke her hair. "I am just an old man, Maya." "No," she said, looking up at me, her eyes fierce. "You are the giant who broke the castle to save the princess, and giants don't let the bad guys win." She stood up and wrapped her arms around my neck. It was a hug that contained all the safety and love she had been denied for so long. "I am happy, Grandpa," she whispered. "I am really happy." "Me too, baby girl," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "Me too." She ran back inside to wash up for dinner. I stayed on the porch for a moment longer. I thought about my career. I thought about the millions I had made, the deals I had closed, the ships I had commanded. I thought about the legacy I had tried to build with money and influence. I realized then that none of that mattered. The stocks, the bonds, the properties, they were just paper. Dust in the wind. My real legacy wasn't in a bank account. It wasn't in a trust fund. My legacy was a little girl who could ride a horse without fear. My legacy was a boy in Vermont learning to be kind. My legacy was the peace of this porch. I had spent my life building structures, but in the end, the most important thing I ever built was a home for a child who had none. I finished my tea. The ice clinked against the glass. It was the sound of a job well done. I stood up and walked inside, closing the screen door behind me. The sun had set on the past. The future was waiting at the dinner table, and I didn't want to be late. Family is not defined by the blood that runs through your veins, but by the love and protection you provide when the storm hits. My son and his wife chased the hollow shimmer of a perfect life on social media, treating a child's heart as a prop and an old man's generosity as a right. They forgot that true wealth isn't found in a cruise suite or a viral video, but in the trust of those who depend on you. In their greed, they lost everything: their home, their reputation, and their children. I learned that sometimes you have to be the villain in their story to be the hero in a child's life. Justice wasn't just served, it was earned. We often mistake legacy for the numbers in a bank account, but true legacy is the safety we provide to the ones we love. My son believed that a luxury cruise and designer labels made him a success. He forgot that a real man never leaves his child behind. Blood might connect us, but actions define us. In the end, he lost his family chasing a mirage, while I found mine in the courage of a little girl. Never let greed blind you to the treasures you already hold in your arms. Justice is not given. It is built. If you believe that every child deserves to be protected, no matter what, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. And tell me in the comments below, would you have given them a second chance? I want to hear your thoughts.